Thank you for joining us. That's right, this is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I am happy to be here with you today. We're going to be speaking about a lot of things, as always. We're going to be speaking to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive. In fact, most of Facebook. It seems that Facebook is blocking us from being able to reach everyone, all the channels that we have subscribed to. That's all right. We're going to keep going forward no matter what. And we're going to be talking about the things that the news media doesn't like. We're going to be talking about the things that the internet overlords don't like what's going on with Alec Baldwin. But I want to compare that to what we're seeing with Afghanistan, what we're seeing with the Afghan refugees. How is that impacting our inflation? How is that affecting the economy? How is it affecting your lives? And not just here in the United States, but anywhere in the world. If this is the first time that you're joining us, I want to welcome you to the channel, and I look forward to hearing your comments and your thoughts and your phone calls. But we want you to know, this is about free speech. This is about what you think, about your comments. Because almost always, you never get to speak. No one is asking you your thoughts. We do. And we hope that you'll be joining us and sharing your thoughts about all the issues we're going to be speaking about. And we hope that you're going to enjoy this discussion and perhaps walk away knowing a little bit more than what you did before. So I want to talk about what's happening with Alec Baldwin. I want to talk about what's going on in America right now, that we know more about Alec Baldwin than we do about what's going on in our local communities, than we do about what's happening in the country at this time. And it's pretty terrifying. I got to tell you, it's terrifying to find out that we know more about the shooting with Alec Baldwin than we do about what's going on with Afghan refugees that are attacking women as we speak. That's a terrifying thought. That's a terrifying thing that I have to be able to say, that we know more about Alec Baldwin than women being assaulted across the United States. Can you believe that? Hang on a second. I'm just updating this on the internet so that people will be able to find this, because the internet overlord's not very happy about that. Give me a second. I can only do this once it goes live. So let me tell you what's happening here, folks. Now, you may recall, and I'm sure everyone has seen the news about Alec Baldwin at this point. Alec Baldwin and many shooters, many people who are firearm owners. There's about 165 million firearm owners in the United States at this time. And the big question amongst those who have been trained, who have learned how to properly handle a firearm, they're asking the same question. Why did Alec Baldwin point a loaded firearm at individuals, at human beings, without the intent to actually kill someone? Now, that's not exactly a fair question, per se. And that's because this is on a movie set. This was happening while he was filming. And this is a Wild West movie, as far as we can tell, when this was happening. At least that's the news that we know. And the thing is that Alec Baldwin supposedly didn't know that the firearm he was given was a live, regular, loaded firearm. This is the big news. This is the news that you are being told, and this is capturing all the news media. I mean, unless you're watching sports right now, you're probably watching something and it's telling you about Alec Baldwin and this horrible, horrible accident. And we know that the news media is talking about the fact that it wasn't his fault. He was given a firearm that he didn't know was loaded. Well, let me first debunk something about that. Oops, that wasn't shown. And the first thing I want to say about that is, whenever you are handed a firearm, the first thing you do is check, is it loaded? I don't care who hands it to you. I don't care whether you're on a movie set or anywhere else. Someone hands you a firearm, you check the firearm. You make sure it's completely safe. You make sure that it's not loaded. That is a prerequisite. And we've seen this in Hollywood before, in 1984 and in 1993. In 1993 was probably one of the more famous cases with Brandon Lee on the set of The Crow that killed him. We need to understand this is, yes, it may not have been Alec Baldwin's fault in that he was handed a firearm that was loaded, but at the same time, it's Alec Baldwin's fault because he assumed that that was correct and didn't check for himself. He does have liability here. He is culpable in this. And I believe truly that he is sincere when he says that he is anguished about this, that he had no intention to do this, that this was not meant to be, this was never meant to happen. And I understand that the director and the photographer, cinematographer, that they were innocent victims in this. They didn't know either. But we have to understand. And the left loved to sell us. Well, guns are deadly. Guns are horrible. It's not the gun at fault here. It isn't the gun's fault that it was loaded. Someone else loaded it. Someone handed it to Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin took it and decided to fire it without checking anything. This isn't the fault of the firearm. This is the fault of Alec Baldwin. At the end of the day, it's his fault. Now, at the moment, there are no charges about this, but there should be. It's involuntary manslaughter. It is a crime, and he did do it. And you may sympathize with him, as I do, and you may say it was horrible, it was terrible, but it was also something that was avoidable. He had every ability to stop this. But here's the thing that I really want to focus on about this, okay? When we're talking about Alec Baldwin, we're talking about this shooting, this horrible incident, and this woman who has died, I want you to understand something. What aren't you being told? What is the news media doing while this is happening? Let me ask you, did you know that there were women who were sexually assaulted in Montana and in Wisconsin and in Texas and in New Mexico? Did you hear about that story? Are you aware of that news? That right now in America, there are stories about the Afghan refugees who are unvetted, who are individuals we know nothing about, who did not help America for 2 decades in Afghanistan. Somewhere around 50,000 individuals are in the United States right now that are capable of walking around our country and are being distributed across our country, and you don't know a thing about them. You don't know who these people are. You don't know what these people think. And what we do know is that individually and in groups, some of these individuals, and I'm not saying all the Afghan refugees, some of them believe it's perfectly okay to go out and to sexually assault minors and grown women. And they are doing so. And they are doing so repeatedly. And it's starting to be, it's not just a trend, it's a pattern. We are seeing this happen repeatedly. We've seen it in, again, New Mexico, in Texas, in Wisconsin, and now in Montana. And at some point, at an unknown point, they're going to be, these Afghan refugees who are unvetted are going to be distributed across our nation. And you don't know about this, but the news media is telling you all about Alec Baldwin and his terrible, tragic accident that he is at fault for. And they're telling you it's not his fault because he did nothing wrong, except he didn't do the number one rule that you will learn from every gun safety expert, every gun range, every firearm store in the nation will tell you the very first thing: check the gun, make sure it's unloaded. Check the gun, make sure it's safe. It's the very first thing you're taught. So yes, he is at fault, but you know more about Alec Baldwin and his emotional state right now than the women who were sexually assaulted in 4 states. 4. In the last 30 days. This isn't something that's just happened. And one of the most recent case, which is in Montana, happened this week. This week. It was Wednesday. And we had a governor speaking out and saying, this is a problem. We had a Montana governor, we had a Montana senator, and a Montana representative of Congress that all spoke out and said, there is a problem here, and we need to get to the root of this problem to protect American citizens. And you don't know about it. You don't even know a single word about it. Mind you, if you disagree with me on this, if you think that Alec Baldwin is an innocent man, if you think this is more important news than the sexual assault of women for the last 30 days in the United States, the most recent case happening last week, let me know. Please, we're looking forward to seeing your comments. You can say you agree, you disagree. We're not progressives here. You can tell me what you think. You can disagree with this program. Please do. Just make it about the issues, not a personal attack. And you can call in at 607-242-1582. Our phone is on, and we are happy to hear your voices as well. But I think it's important to understand the differences that we're seeing here. The degree of, well, I won't call it disinformation. It's not misinformation. It's obfuscation. It's not that the news isn't telling you what's going on. Yeah, it is. They're not telling you what's going on. They're talking about one story, so you don't listen to another story. So you don't pay attention to what's happening, what's going to be happening in your neighborhood. And I'm going to be going into this in detail because we have reached out to 15 members of government at the state and the federal level. We reached out to senators. We reached out to members of Congress. We've reached out to state legislators. We've reached out to governors, asking them about your safety, about what they're going to do to protect you. And you will be amazed by the answer that we have received to date. And I'm going to go over that with you. And I believe this is a story that you're going to be seeing that has gone beyond just this channel, just beyond our news media reach, that the major news media will be taking up the story if we are correct with our sources in the major news media. We believe they will be following up on this story because it's important to your life and to your safety. But I want you to understand why I'm so upset. Now, and again, you can tell me, Mike, I disagree. I don't think this is important. You can tell me, Mike, I don't think this is a big deal. You can tell me that Alec Baldwin is more important than the sexual assault of women. You can tell me that you don't care about the Afghan refugees and whatever they do to American citizens. It's perfectly fine. Maybe there's a different story you want to talk about. I don't know. Maybe you want to talk about the fact that we're finally seeing something that we talked about back in February. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you've been following this channel, we've done over 1,200 videos. We've been speaking about all kinds of subjects. And you may recall in February, we were talking about inflation. In fact, it was February 17th when we told you that the U.S. economy would crash in the second half of 2021. That was on February 17th of 2021. It was obvious on this channel, and we provided you the evidence of why we believed and why we could conclude that the economy was going to be crashing, that we were in trouble. Inflation was going to run rampant in this nation. No one believed us. The major media, news media, ignored this. They didn't want to tell you this. And here we are, October 23rd, yesterday, Saturday. We see that Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey says hyperinflation will happen soon in the United States. We see the economists now coming out and saying inflation is real and it's going to be with us long term. No kidding. We knew that already. It was obvious to every American citizen. And I think it was obvious to you. But you know what? We've been trained by the news media to believe that if an individual like yourself, you go to the store, you see food is missing. You see essential goods aren't there. You see the price of those goods are going higher and higher. Whoa, seems like someone doesn't like this. They froze our channel for a second. Don't worry, I'm still here with you. I know the screen seems to have been frozen. Come on. But I want you to understand, why is my screen frozen? It seems our system is being, oh, there it goes. It it seems interesting that you know this for a reality. You know this is a fact, that when you've gone to the store, you're seeing the inflation right in front of you. You're seeing it when you go and buy groceries. I was at the store a week ago. I bought one plastic bag full of food, cost me $120. That's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. But yet you aren't being told that, and we have been trained to believe that until we see someone, and Ed, I'm going to get right to your comment in 1 second, and thank you for joining us. But we're being told that until someone famous, until some channel like CNBC tells us that this is happening, it's not a reality. And if anyone tells you, oh, this is how we see inflation, we know that prices are going up, there's a problem with our economy, well, no, you're just wrong. You're insane. Because if it was real, the news media would tell us about it. No, they won't. They will hide information from you because they have a political bias. They have an agenda. That's what I think. But let me see what Ed thinks. Ed mentions, and again, thank you, Ed, for commenting, and we're glad to see you with us. Ed says, our government is doing the same exact thing with those crossing the southern border, sending them to cities across our country in the dead of night without governments knowing a thing about it. It applies everywhere. Alec Baldwin is also important, but for a different reason. Not only did he personally comment on cops shooting perps, but committed criminally negligent homicide, and the media is attempting to cover it up. Well, I'm going to be speaking about illegal aliens that are on their way to the United States. In fact, I'm going to show you the difference of two different stories. A story from within the United States and one from outside the United States, talking about the very same event. And I'm going to show you how the news media bias is harming you. This is a problem for you. But I agree with you. Alec Baldwin, the story, you know what? It is important. It is a lesson in gun safety. It is a lesson to us to always remember you must always check any firearm the moment you pick it up to ensure that it is a completely safe weapon. I cannot say that enough. But at the same time, we see the news media saying, well, that's not the problem. The gun, it's not really Alec Baldwin's fault. They're kind of saying that it's the gun's fault. It's someone else's fault. It's the person who handed him the gun. It's the fact that the gun was loaded. No, it's Alec Baldwin's fault. It is negligent homicide. It is involuntary manslaughter. It is. But why is that the biggest news? Why is it that a story we talked about in February, talking about our economy, is a story that you're only hearing about now in October, and it's the same exact news. It's the same evidence that we knew back in February that was that obvious and predictable. You've been lied to for months. For 8 months, the news media held down the fact that inflation was real. The fact that when you went to the store and you spent money, that you knew inflation was happening. And you were told you are crazy. It's not true. It isn't happening. Don't believe your own bank account. You know, that's terrifying to me. But yet they want you to focus, but instead of thinking about your bank account, they want you to take sympathy for Alec Baldwin. You're not hearing anyone in the news media say, this is a lesson in gun safety. We have to be reminded constantly of this. They're not saying that. There's 165 million gun owners in America. Last year in 2020, there were 7 million new gun owners out there. We should be telling them this, for every one of those new gun owners, you should be trained. You should learn how to properly use this firearm. You should always check this firearm as soon as you pick it up. You're not hearing the news media say that. No one in the news media, these anti-gun news advocates like CNBC, NBS, CNN, not one of them are telling people something that will actually benefit you. They're not trying to help you. They're trying to help Alec Baldwin. They're trying to help Hollywood. This is a difference, and this is the thing that gets to me, is that we should be hearing better things from our news media. They should be telling us the story that actually helps us, not the story that helps someone else, that is meant to help a political agenda. Let me go on to something else, because I think I've made my point that they're trying to tell you that you don't know things that are happening right in front of your face. And they want you to believe things that aren't actually true. You know what? And this is so obvious now that we're hearing from individuals on the left. Remember, we've been hearing from Bill Maher. He suddenly changed his stripes after demanding that people ignore sexual assault alleged to have happened by Joe Biden from Tara Reid. When he was last year, this same time, 1 year ago, he was telling people it doesn't matter if there was a sexual assault. That's Bill Maher. We covered that news story a year ago. He said it doesn't matter because you have to elect Joe Biden. And here he is today saying, oh my God, Joe Biden is horrible. There is a problem. Well, it's not just Joe Biden. In fact, I doubt Joe Biden knows what's going on. But the left is noticing this, or at least some on the left are noticing this. Because, and yes, Tina, thank you for joining us. And yes, Bill Maher has been red-pilled. He suddenly woke up to, this is what he asked for, and this is the result. And I want you to understand, it's not just him, because it gets a lot bigger. And that means a lot more people are understanding this. And this is from Russell Brand, who's pretty popular on the left. And sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. But I do listen to him. And I want you to hear something that he had to say at this point. And this came out on October 20th.
Strains and these particular slants on a story. But my point is, you're working for a news organization. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about Syria? Do you understand that that's why people get concerned about the veracity of the news? So, there you go. Joe Rogan spells out the nature of the problem. Once you can see the existence of bias plainly, and I know because I read your comments, that you guys, wherever you are on the political spectrum, are well schooled in media bias, media prejudice. You've taught me how to look at stories differently. The reason I think it's a significant point, one is of course Joe Rogan has a voice that's big enough to reach people, and because it points out something that's really plain and really obvious. The media is not telling you news, the media is pushing you in a particular direction.
That's exactly it. And there you go. And maybe you don't believe me. Maybe I'm not large enough. I'm not a mega star. I don't have millions of dollars. Russell Brand does. I don't have an international platform like Russell Brand does. And yet he's able to see the same thing that we've been speaking about on this channel for some time. You're being, yes, I know, Jason, the playback is fuzzy. There's not much I can do about that. That's from YouTube. But what we're hearing is the media is lying to us, which is why they're at what I believe belief in the media at the moment, the major news media, is about 36%. And that's because we can't trust them. Look at the stories that they're telling us. They're telling us 8 months after the fact, the news that we already knew was available. They're telling us, oh, inflation is real. We knew that. We saw it in our paychecks. We saw this back in February. We saw the economic policies turn and hurt us. They're telling us that, oh, well, with Joe Rogan, they admitted, Dr. Gupta admitted that CNN lied to the American people, that they tailored a story meant to scare you, to make you, rather than actually tell you the truth, rather than tell you the options that are available, they said that Joe Rogan was using a horse dewormer, which is debunked, is not true. And then they turned around and doubled down and had Don Lemon on CNN say, no, but it is still true because that's what he took. No, he didn't. That is a lie. And they know it's a lie. And they admitted it's a lie. And yet they still tell you that. They still tell you that this is not the truth. Tell you things that are not true. They want you to believe, because you can only believe them. And don't you dare look at anyone else. When you listen to Russell Brand, as he points out the obvious fact that you already know, they tell you you're insane, you're crazy. How could you not believe us? It's the major news media. We saw the Hunter Biden situation with his laptop. Not true. 4 months later, yes, it's absolutely true. We see that Hunter Biden we hear the news that he lied on a gun permit, which is a federal violation. They turn around, they tell us, no, it's not true. Then they tell us 6 months later, yeah, it's true, and there's an investigation, but don't worry about it. They tell us, how many times have they told us things that we shouldn't worry about? Mike Bowie mentions, Hunter laptop, it was real 8 months after the election. Exactly. It was actually 4 months afterwards that they said, oh my God, you know what? There's this laptop that belongs to Hunter Biden. No kidding. We already knew that in October. They told us it was true in January. Why is the news media lying to us? Why do they not want you to know what's going on? Why are they downplaying these stories? And these are things that you know, because they want you to be ignorant and they want you to be subservient. I mean, I'll give you another example of what I'm talking about here, because I think this is a really big issue, and I think it's very important because it is affecting our lives. Let's look at it from another point of view. This is from NPR, okay? And NPR, again, left-leaning source, October 24th, today. We see that they came out with this. Thousands of workers across the United States would rather lose their jobs than be vaccinated. Well, you know, we've been talking about this for over a month. We are one of the only news agencies in the southern tier and central New York that have been talking about protests that have been going on for the last month from doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers who wanted to work but didn't want a vaccine. And you were told by the same major news media that didn't want to tell you about the hyperinflation, that want to tell you that Alec Baldwin is absolutely innocent and did nothing wrong, the same news media that don't want to tell you about the fact that Afghan refugees are assaulting women in 4 states and they're about to be distributed, 50,000 of them, throughout the United States, and no one knows anything about them. That same news media told you, oh, there aren't any people who are doing this. This is a minority of people. This isn't a real thing to worry about. It has no impact on the United States. It has no impact on your quality of life. Well, let's see. What do we know about this? This has affected news anchors. This is affecting people who are doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals. It's affecting airlines. It's affecting police. Do you remember in Chicago, we have thousands of police officers that may not be able to work. And I love how in this article from NPR, they love to say that it's people who are fired or quit. No, they're fired. They were fired because Joe Biden said, I will at some point pass a legislation that's going to make this a requirement, which is something beyond his control. He doesn't have that power. He cannot compel that. It is illegal for him to even try. It is an abuse of power, which they don't want to mention to you, which is why he hasn't actually made it official. That's why the government hasn't actually come out with a regulation to say you must be getting the pandemic medication. I have to be careful of my wording because this is Facebook, and if I say certain things in a certain way, they will shut us down again. But that's why he hasn't come out with a mandate saying, oh, here's the rule, you have to have this or else, because he can't do that by law. The news media doesn't want to tell you he can't do this. What they are telling you is he said that he wants this to happen. That's not the same thing as a law. Just because a president, any president, wants something to happen doesn't mean it happens. That's not how the United States works. That's not how our legal system works. The president can want anything he wants. Congress creates law. The Supreme Court makes sure those laws are legal. The executive branch, Joe Biden, they're there to enforce the laws. And in fact, they should be enforcing all the laws, which they aren't. And that's the way that it's supposed to break down. No, Jason, I'm not worried about people calling. Call in. Call in. Trust me, I will stop you if I think we're about to hit one of the red flags from YouTube where they would silence this show. But I think people need to speak. People need to have their voices heard. And that's what this show is about. And I'm willing to take that risk. But if someone thinks, if you're on the left and you're watching this, and I thank you for doing that, you don't have to agree with me. If you want to say, Mike, you don't get it. If you're a progressive, if you're a conservative, a libertarian, you think that, Mike, you're just not understanding this. You're misrepresenting this. The sources that I'm using, they're not left-leaning enough. Please let me know. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm not saying that I have it right. I'm telling you, this is the conclusions I'm coming to based on the information that's out here. And there is more. But I think we need to be aware of this, and we need to understand we need to change this. Because our news media are not serving us, they're serving politicians. And our politicians are avoiding the issues that actually matter to us. We have, right now, Joe Biden's trying to get past his American Families Plan. A plan that is meant to allow the IRS, in part, and allow the IRS to get into your bank account. Remember, it was $600. If you had a bank account with $600, you had a credit card with $600, you had an investment account, stocks, bonds, crypto. If you had anything, PayPal, you had anything with $600 in it, the IRS wanted access to that. And that's the American Families Plan, because rich people are bad. Even though I don't know anyone who wants to be poor, I don't know anyone in the world who wants to be poor, but rich people are bad, yet everyone wants to be rich. In fact, that's one of the main reasons that people come to the United States, is to get rich, to have a better quality of life, to be able to have money, to be able to spend it on things that improve the quality of life. But rich people are bad. So why are all these rich people trying to pass these laws that are telling you that you should be poor, that you don't need to be rich, you don't want to be rich? And I'm talking about members of Congress. What is it? I believe half of Congress are multimillionaires. I believe the last time the numbers were out, there was about 46% of members of Congress are millionaires, including Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, individuals who have done nothing in their lives except be in government. And they're telling you, no, we want to punish the rich. They are the rich. They want to punish themselves? Don't you believe that? I've never seen a politician pass a law that actually punishes themselves ever. Ever. And I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about there, because they have never passed a law that would affect themselves. I'll show you what I mean. And again, this is coming from CNBC. The Federal Reserve is looking to ban their members from being able to own individual stocks, that they cannot own individual investment accounts because they make the laws and the rules that affect the stock market. They are inside traders. They take advantage of it and they make millions while you and I have to react afterwards. You have never seen one member of Congress, these multimillionaires, 46% of Congress, as I recall, that have turned around and said, oh, you know what? We need to block our access to individual accounts. Nancy Pelosi never said, when she owned wind energy stocks and promoted wind energy and renewable energy and made a fortune, had an investment that went up 300%, not once did she say, oh, I shouldn't own individual stocks because I'm affecting laws and I am funding the industry that I have invested in. And the news media didn't tell you and has totally forgotten about the fact that, oh yeah, Nancy Pelosi is actually benefiting from the very stocks she is telling you and the laws that she is promoting. There's that bias again. They don't want you to know the truth. And if you're telling me these politicians are doing this because it's in our best interest, then why wouldn't they pass the same thing that the Federal Reserve is looking to do? Ban them from being able to own individual stocks. They can't do that. Isn't it a simple answer? Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think it's not important. I think it is important. Because as we hear from our friends in the progressives, oh, corporations are evil. The money from corporations are evil. They're corrupting our politicians. Okay, then why aren't you asking our politicians to do what we're seeing the Federal Reserve do? Why are we not hearing them say, Nancy Pelosi, give up your individual stock account? Chuck Schumer, give up your individual stock account. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, give up your individual stock account that you are making money on based on the laws that you are passing or attempting to pass, which is an unfair advantage. Why aren't we hearing the left insist on this? If they truly want the best for everyone, they want an even playing field. If corporations are so evil, then why are they not insisting that their very own lawmakers in their very own party play by the same set of rules? Why is there such a difference of rules for them versus you and me? Hang on, folks. We have a call coming in. Give it 1 second. I just need to plug you in here. I was charging up the phone as we were waiting. All right. Thank you for calling in. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I'm your host, Michael Voss. Who's speaking?
Hey, Mike. It's Jason.
Hi, Jason. All right. And Jason, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, there's a few topics I want to talk, but I mean, you were talking about the situation with the stock market and the manipulation by these politicians, and it's one of those things that where I've been more following the stock market probably more closely than I ever had in my life. Basically, it's because of the political element that I've became actually more interested in it, but. When you're talking about the different politicians and the policies that they're pushing through, which generally, directly benefit their, bank account. And, this comes back to one of the things that I, continue to think about too, is just when it comes to the vaccine and the vaccine mandates and the amount of money that is generated by these big companies. When it comes to, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson and Johnson. I think Pfizer itself was not even really it was a blip in a map, before they had this vaccine come out. I don't think they had anything of really that substantial. But
not for a few years. They've had several drugs over the years.
Yeah, well, with the sort of billions of dollars revenue that this one generated, though.
Viagra, huge. It was huge. I was a stockbroker back then. I remember it was Viagra. But I just want to give some reference that they weren't a small company before this.
Was it Moderna? It's one of the. I can't remember. Maybe it was Moderna was the one that had the main line on it. I know there was one, but the thing is that there's definitely some place politically when it came even to that, because I mean if you remember back what happened right before the election. Or the week after election, that's when, I believe it was Pfizer announced that they had, released the findings saying that they were going to have a vaccine by the beginning of the year. Which
2 weeks before it was 2 weeks after the election, and they mentioned they would have it by the end of the year, going into the new year. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you can't tell me that right there, that wasn't a massive political, element when it came to, that right there could have easily, changed the election,
Yes.
Just having that information out in front. And when you look at the behavior and the overall, push with this, as well, too, I mean, there's been, the nonstop, push an agreement with, the Biden administration, along the way to pretty much follow through with continually, either pushing the mandate or now even, the further suggestions where we will have even further, vaccines when it comes to booster shots, Well,
and I was going to talk about this in a little bit, and I want to mention something that a lot of people didn't realize. The Federal Reserve says that the vaccine mandates are hurting employment, that they are hurting people's jobs and taking away their ability to work. That's from the Federal Reserve itself. And I can tell you that in New York State, and I'm showing this on the screen right now, part of that is that we're still almost 1 million jobs down from where we were in the beginning of 2020, where we were in 2019. So the unemployment rate, while it seems like it's going down, we don't have all the jobs that we used to have. So these mandates are hurting us. But go on.
Yeah, it's not just the mandates. I mean, even personally, I can address this. Is like, I mean, I'm fortunate where I have the capacity to do certain things with what I have in my life. But what's happening, I think, is that, like, I just had a situation the other day where there was somebody, one of the staff at the school that my son goes to had COVID, and they had to shut down for like 2 days. And then they basically open back up again. And the thing is that if they continue this practice of shutting down every 2 days like that, I mean, nobody can get a consistent job. I mean, how do you just all of a sudden just instantly have childcare or have plans of that sort of nature? So I mean, for people who have kids and are in this position, it's very vicarious, because you can't just keep turning off and on here, like that without, basic plans. And so I think that is one of the things that, you're seeing the hesitancies to. I mean, there's always that thought in your mind too, is just that when you listen to these politicians, there's just no end to this pandemic and what they're willing to do. And you're just thinking, geez, are you going to lock us down again?
Well,
and when I said that to some people, they're saying, well, that's never going to happen. And I'm just like, well, I said, yeah, there are politicians who want to do that. I said, you have to look no farther than what's going on in Australia. I mean, And in Australia is a horrible, although they are starting to reduce some of the restrictions, the fact the military is running around in Australia and they are literally going door to door, knocking on people's doors to check if they're vaccinated or not, to check that whether or not they have COVID. That's terrifying. But let me ask you this, because you brought up a very interesting thing. They're saying that, these mandates and the pandemic regulations aren't hurting people, and that they're in your best interest. Let me ask you something, because this, I think, makes logical sense. If we see once every week, once every month, we see a business or an institution like our schools shut down, and then we see that we can't get goods to our stores, which, think about it. If your various businesses for shipping things have to shut down because of someone having the pandemic, and we see that these industries are shutting down, are you surprised that we can't get goods from the boats that are just offshore into the stores on a regular basis, which is damaging and we already heard them say this is going to affect Christmas and the fourth quarter, and therefore the economy and the ability of people to get food and essential items. Doesn't that make sense? And have you heard one single member of the major news media, put that together for you? No, and I don't think they understand some of the impact that's happening. Now, larger businesses like Amazon or Walmart's or, businesses that have a large pool of different items that they can sell, regularly to consumers, they can absorb that sort of cost. But niche businesses which have, single items, that they rely on selling, and those items aren't available, for resale, those are pretty much crushing small businesses that are in that niche business, because if you don't have a supply chain coming, and I know even personally, like, there are things that, even with my own, business that, I mean, they're projecting that there's not supposed to be an uptick, they're projecting maybe 6 months, get back to normal, which they've been saying everything back to normal forever now. But the thing is, though, is that without those resources coming in, it's just like there's a tremendous impact on the business, because not only can you not, obviously, get the supplies to actually produce the product you have, but also by not being able to produce the product also puts you at a massive disadvantage, where if you do have a customer base in a certain sector, you're going to lose those customers, And so then you're going to have to spend more resources, on more advertising and more other, costs to actually recoup that business that you lose during that period of time. and it's just a whirlwind of pain.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
As a member of a business, you're a business owner.
Right.
Do you hear the news media talking about your concerns? Is it more important for them to talk about Alec Baldwin than to talk about what's causing the supply chain problem and a solution to that? I'll give you a great example. Pete Buttigieg, who's in charge of the transportation department, former governor, former Democratic presidential nominee, took a vacation for 2 months because of parental leave. So he's gone for 2 months. He's not running the transportation department. Do you think that's helping your business, or you think that's hurting it? And do you hear anyone in the news media talking about it?
No, and one of the things that bothers me about it is when I look at the big picture of what that is with Buttigieg, with all these different economical plans, which all interconnect. When it comes to, our transportation, the way we transport things, our labor, that we actually, the people who have to get hired, and when it comes to energy, every single one of these things, the current Biden administration has put roadblocks up to do everything contrary to what the market would actually, dictate that would actually be successful. And, look at just the energy alone. When you look at the pipeline that was canceled and this other stuff and all these things that are just building, our energy costs even this year, it's supposed to go up, for our gas, in the Northeast and stuff, they're talking about nearly a 50 to maybe even 100%, increase in gas costs of, heating. And, that right there, that will sink big business, or it will sink small businesses for sure that have, double energy costs, during this time, on top of labor, and then on top of, these other shortages. It's a perfect storm of just complete, chaos. And the administration has everything to blame, in my opinion, on this, because they are putting, instead of trying to open up, avenues where they can get more resources cheaper, quicker, to get, the economy back to where it was. They're bungling this up. And the thing that really drives me nuts is that I was listening to individuals going, they're like, well, what, the economy still is ripping up. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's not even up to where it was, prior to this. And some people, they try to mask it as it is. Like, there was a there was business numbers. People were reporting that they're like, yeah, 85% of all businesses that were closed down are opened up. And I'm like, and then they're making it sound like that's a good thing. And I'm like, well, what about the 15% of businesses that aren't opened up, that maybe don't exist anymore? I just like.
Well, on the screen I have on right now from New York State, the September 2021 numbers, and this is a chart from New York State itself showing us that in January of 2020, we had 8.3 million people working. And now we have 7.5 million people working in New York State. Is it a recovery from the bottom when we shut everything down in the government, in the country, and we had 6.4 million people working? Yes. But we're nowhere near where we were. People are being affected. And this is the government saying itself. And by the way, part of the problem is that we've fired our healthcare workers because of this mandate. And I can show you that because also on the screen right now, we can show you that in health, in the health services, here's health services, we were down, and they're comparing it to 2020 year over year. September, we were down 144,000 workers. We've hired 43,000 workers since that time. We're still down 100,000 people. And part of that is because we just fired 30,000 doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers because of Kathy Hochul. Let me ask you, how does that make you feel?
It drives me insane, because the thing is that I know, about the science and where this is leading to, because the bottom line is that they're firing all these workers. And I talked to, a local mayoral candidate, about the situation. And, he was telling me that if it came down to it, he would not, if the police, if they refuse to actually, get the vaccine, then he said that he wasn't going to, stop them or fire them for anything at all. And, I said,
which
well,
there's a mayoral race in the Binghamton area in southern tier of New York, for people who don't know. Which candidate said that to you?
Cram, Jared Cram.
Okay, candidate Jared Cram said that he would not fire police if they decided to not get the vaccine. Okay.
Right.
Was that widely covered by the news media?
Well, I don't know. You know what? It's just, it hasn't hit my radar.
Okay, so it's something that he told you, but the media isn't asking about. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, he just wants. Obviously, he doesn't want to put us in a situation where the whole community's unsafe because we don't have a workforce. And when it came though to just the conversation I was having, I said, even with those who are in complete agreement with actually getting the initial vaccine, I said, well, look at, I mean, what statistically is happening right now, you're seeing the fall off rate of the vaccine, which is going to require booster shots. And the question is that will these same people be willing to get a booster shot every 6 months? Because and the question is I'm sure that some will, but more and more people are probably going to fall off the list, and this will, potentially lead to.
Well, let me stop you right there, because I know YouTube is paying attention, and I want to be very clear. We are not recommending any kind of medication or process for anyone. We are not doctors. I will say very clearly for YouTube that we are not telling people to do or not to get any pandemic medication. That is a conversation for you and your private doctor, based on your personal medical health and health care, and that you should speak to a medical professional about that. I just want to be very clear about that we are saying that because YouTube is very particular about that.
Yeah, and I say the same thing. I mean, follow your doctors, and on that part. I'm just simply saying the fact, though, is that if you look at what the behavior of people are and what tends to happen, while this continues, I believe it's going to be a hard sell, to tell somebody that they got to get a booster shot, every 6 months. And there's nothing in my mind that would tell me that you wouldn't have to, because as we see is that, people are getting reinfected with COVID. And if, in fact, the solution to the problem is, to make sure that you're constantly vaccinated with the most amount of, antibodies given from, the vaccine, then, they want to at least probably keep you, around 80% efficiency or effectiveness,
That's getting into a very difficult area. What we can say is that, we need to reintegrate our society. We have to change the American society to build in this repetitious cycle of getting another booster and another booster, theoretically ad nauseum, foreseeably for the near future, continuously. And so you have to build in to a cycle of your businesses that every business in every industry has to periodically shut down or be understaffed, so that people can go out and get a shot and then come back to work. And that doesn't sound like it's a very effective way, especially considering the 98% survival rate, and also looking at natural immunity, which is not considered, religious exemptions, which are not considered, medical exemptions, which are not considered, as stated by Governor Kathy Hochul, as well as many others. And that doesn't even take into account what happens if you lose your job because you didn't get that, and you cannot get any kind of unemployment or services from the state because they're punishing you. That's another big question, which is not being addressed by the news media. No one in the news media, tell me if I'm wrong, has anyone in the news media said, hey, what are we going to do about the doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, our police that have been fired? They didn't quit, they were fired, and they can't get unemployment services. They have houses, taxes, water bills, food, all the services that they cannot use anymore. What are we going to do about them? And if they leave the state, that means there's going to be a higher tax burden on everyone who stays in the state, which means we're going to be in further debt. Have you heard anyone in the news media make that? And I think that's pretty accurate, pretty obvious conclusion. Has anyone mentioned that and said, hey, we need to address that?
No, because that would hold the Democrat Party accountable for their policies, which are creating the problem. If they do so, they won't be able to quickly turn it around and blame, any other policies that are counter to what they're implementing. So that's what they that's the plan anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll just double down on the same things. They'll get more. I mean, when we see these inflation rates get as ridiculous as they are, and then once employers have to let people go at some point, then you'll see another stimulus come out, and then you'll see further inflation and further stagnation. It's it's not a good thing.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm going to get into that. But I do want to also give people an opportunity to call in if they want to as well. You've covered a lot of ground on a lot of different things that I was going to speak about.
Can I ask you one thing?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, what was your opinion on the Digital World acquisition there with the Trump media SPAC?
President Trump is looking to open up his alternative. That's good.
Yeah, did you see how that thing traded the other day?
I don't care. I don't care about the trading on it. What I want to see is the platform open up and see if it's actually free and fair for people to have their voices heard. Will it give us the same opportunities of social media as we see from the other social media giants to give them some real competition, which doesn't exist at this moment? And then I want to see whether the public accepts that, because they deserve to have competition. At the moment, they can't. I mean, how many billionaires are willing to put in the tens of millions of dollars it's going to require to be able to compete? The last time we saw anyone try that was Parler. And what happened? The Amazon decided to shut them down because they were competing with Twitter and doing a good job. And so that's a monopoly move. That is what monopolies and tyrannies do. Oh, you're competing with us? You have an audience? You're not doing what we want you to do? They shut down Parler, completely killed that company. Well, in this case, we have someone who has enough financial backing that is not necessarily going to happen. So the only question that's left is, let's see what the public says about that, because I think the left will be very surprised to see that people will go to where they have an opportunity to have their voices heard. And that means they will abandon Facebook. They will abandon Twitter, not completely, but in enough numbers that they're no longer going to have the influence that they've been having. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah,
that's the part that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at not just obviously the numbers that happened, but just the emotion that's behind, this particular stock. Because some stocks just go up from, sheer emotion or, a lot of that sort of stuff.
All stocks move based on emotion.
Yeah, but you could tell, there was just like the emotion that was behind. That's the thing is just that Trump obviously has always been able to, bring a lot of emotion and, just focus, on things that he's doing. But this particular stock, it started off on the other day at $10 and it went all the way up to $175. That's an 800% increase, in 2 days.
Do you know what that means? Do you know what that means? People want and need and desire an opportunity to be able to speak freely. They want to have the First Amendment. Around the world, people want to be able to talk like they are on this program, like you are doing right now. People want to be able to have a conversation about the things that are affecting them. And we have companies, the internet overlords, are denying them. And the moment that they get a realistic opportunity to have another choice, people are flocking to it. That should tell you that freedom is not free in America at this moment, that censorship is alive and well and hurting us. That's what I take from that.
You know what I thought the first day? The first day it went up to $40. When I saw $40, I was thinking, I'm thinking, wow, everybody's like, well, they're all thinking, let's make America great again. Then the following morning, when it hit 175, all I could think about was they must have been all chanting, let's go, Brandon.
Yeah. I think it's very important that we have an option to be able to exercise our First Amendment right. And I think that's a right that is universal. Everyone in the world should have the right to have their voices be heard, and the internet overlords and governments should not stop that. Now, I understand only in the United States is that protected, and even at this moment, with Article 230, with the way the internet overlords act, the way that I have to protect certain things that I've said on this program, because if I don't, my show will be deleted by YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. It tells you we're not very free right now. And that's why people want. I think that's the bigger thing. And I think that's what former President Trump has seen. People want an alternative. They are frustrated and fed up that they can't speak, and that every time they do speak, they're being attacked. The people with the vaccine mandates, think about it. And we showed it on this program before at the protests. News media won't cover the protests. We heard them say when they did cover it, the one time they did cover it, they said everyone was disgruntled. These are doctors and nurses and healthcare workers saying, I want to fight for my right to go to work. And they said, well, they're disgruntled. How can you be disgruntled and fight to go to work? That doesn't make any sense. And I think everyone sees it. I think it's obvious. I think Russell Brand was talking about it earlier. And that's why our nation is in trouble right now. But let me do this. Let me let you go. I want to make sure other people have an opportunity to speak as well about this and other things. And I do thank you, Jason, for taking some time to speak with us about your thoughts on everything.
All right. Yep. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. And I think Jason brought up some great questions and some great issues. You know, these are important things. Do you think that you should have the right to be able to speak on social media? Do you think that right now you don't have the right to speak freely on social media? Do you feel oppressed? That's a really big question. Do you feel like you are oppressed, that your voice cannot be heard on social media right now? I'd like to hear your answers on that. And I'm going to ask that in a second. So I'm putting that in right now. And I want to ask you a question, because since we're talking about, we started off the show talking about what's going on with Alec Baldwin, okay? And we were talking about the shooting. And it is our position on the show that says Alec Baldwin is guilty of a crime, that it's involuntary manslaughter. It is his negligence that caused a death, and he should be charged with it. Regardless of whether someone handed the gun when he was on a movie set, doesn't really matter. He should be held accountable for that. And we're not hearing that from the news media. But at the same time, I want you to be aware that we are looking at progressives who are using the Second Amendment to advance their agendas. We're just starting to see this. I don't think a lot of people have seen this. And this comes from Reuters. Okay, this is a story from Reuters that came out on October 22nd. I doubt a lot of people noticed it, and I don't know a lot of people are paying attention. How we are now seeing the far left use the opportunity, use the discussion about the Second Amendment, and they're using that to say, well, it's about racism, that the Second Amendment is racist. Did you know that? Because I can swear to you, I didn't. And I've talked to a friend of mine, Maj Toure. You may be familiar with him. I've done interviews with him over at CPAC. I've spoken with him many times. And Maj Toure, a great friend of mine out of Philadelphia, has his own program. You can see him. He's the Black Guns Matter. He has a great movement. And you know what? As a black man trying to get black people to own more firearms, I have every belief that he would tell you that's not true, that the Second Amendment isn't racist. But did you know that that's something that they're promoting right now? That they're trying to, and this is why it was on Reuters. Because as much as you hear about the Second Amendment, it's always horrible. Second Amendment, it's terrible. You shouldn't have the right to have a gun. Guns are evil. Unless they're held by white men, and if there's a shooting, well then white men are evil. But otherwise, it's guns are evil if there's a black man involved. Just think of the recent school shootings down in Dallas. The young black male that shot his school, I believe it was in Dallas, maybe get that city wrong. You know, he was a victim. He was bullied. He had no choice but to go and get a gun and to shoot. That's what the news media reported to you. That's why they were getting a GoFundMe account They were trying to put together a GoFundMe account to take care of this kid because he was traumatized by bullies, and that's why he shot someone. So the gun was no longer at fault. He wasn't at fault. No, it's racism that was at fault. He was being bullied. That's the problem. And Alec Baldwin, he's not at fault. Someone gave him the gun. It's not his fault. But every other time, it's the gun. It's the fault of the person who owns the gun and the evil gun owners in America. The media is so backwards on this, and now they're trying to tell us that the Second Amendment is racist. You know what? It's one of the least racist things I've ever seen in our government. The fact that you have a right to own a firearm and protect yourself. And you know what? I wish more women had firearms. I wish they get trained on it. I've recommended it to every woman that I know. And the reason why I do that, I'm going to get to the comments in just 1 second, is because I have been talking about this for a month now, that we have a group of Afghan refugees that are targeting women and minors and are sexually assaulting them. And this has happened in 4 states. 4. When I wrote this letter initially on September 1st, and I sent it out to 6 members of government. I sent it out to New York Governor Kathy Hochul. I sent it out to Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo, Broome County Executive Jason Garnar, Congressman Antonio Delgado, and Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. I sent it to all of them, and I asked them the same things. These Afghan refugees, are they vetted? When are they coming to New York? How many are coming to New York? Where are they going to go in New York? Are they vaccinated? What do we know about these people? You know what I got as a response? I got a response from 2 people, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney and Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo. As we reported, and we reported what they stated verbatim, and their answers were, we don't know. 6 questions, 6 important questions. The answer was, we don't know. No one in the government at the federal or state level have any idea. Since that time, as we then followed up and reported on October 22nd, Friday, we reported that there have been 4 separate attacks by some of these Afghan refugees who have been relocated into Texas, New Mexico, Wisconsin, and now Montana, that have assaulted women, some as individuals, some in groups, and they have assaulted minors. And I have now asked 15 members of our government in the federal and state level of government. I have asked the governor, I have asked members of Congress, I have asked Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, I have gone to county executives, including Mark Molinaro. I've asked Jason Garnar again. I have asked members of Congress, including Antonio Delgado and Lee Zeldin and Claudia Tenney. I have reached out to everyone again and said, give me an update. Are these people vetted? Are we sure that they have been vetted properly? Because that process normally takes 2 years. They have been in the United States less than 30 days, and they are being introduced into our communities. Some 50,000 of the Afghan refugees are not people who have worked with the United States over the last 2 decades. 50,000 that we don't know anything about. And we are seeing that as we introduce them to state after state after state, that they are assaulting, some of them are assaulting women and minors. You know what? I want every woman in America to own a firearm, so that when a gang of individuals from another country that have been introduced into the United States that we know nothing about and have been let loose into our community, that these women will be able to protect themselves. Because I know women are badasses. I'm not going to dispute that. And some women can fight as well as men. But you know what? Your average woman is 5'4" and weighs about 150 pounds. The average man in America is about 5'10" and weighs about 200. There is a difference. And you know what? If you got 3 of them coming at you like that with that kind of a difference, I think a firearm helps to equalize the situation very quickly and helps them from being sexually assaulted. But at the same time, it does not absolve our government officials from ignoring this story. 15 officials at federal and state level, including Kathy Holter, that I have reached out to again, and I have received one response so far, saying from Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo, who is a Democrat, who said she will look into this and I'm going to get an update. I expect the same answer from Claudia Tenney, and I expect both of them to say they have no idea, because no one I have reached out to, all of my contacts in the news media, the major news media. And yes, after 15 years of doing political commentary and interviewing every politician, I know these people personally. I know members of the major news media, and I speak with them on a regular basis. And I believe some of them may take up this story and make it and promote it and speak to their audiences, which are going to be promoted by their institutions. They'll reach more people, and they're going to ask the same question. Why do we have no answers, as there seems to be a consistent trend that there is a portion of these Afghan refugees that are going out and they are assaulting women? And the news media doesn't want to tell you about it, and politicians are avoiding this like the plague. And that is insulting. That is insane. And if our politicians are terrified of being able to answer a very simple question and trying to give you a very simple answer that you are going to be safe, that they cannot give you an assurance that you are safe, then yes, I think it is absolutely important at that same moment that we need to also make sure that not only do we have police, but that we also encourage some of the more vulnerable parts of our society to be able to arm themselves, to defend themselves. Meanwhile, I hear from progressives, no, Mike, you're absolutely wrong. That's not true. Instead, what they're going to say, and I'm going to get to your comment, Ann, and thank you for joining us, Ann. But instead, what we're hearing from progressives is, well, Mike, no, that viewpoint is wrong. First of all, they'll tell you that, well, you must be a racist. Being Afghan isn't a race. That is a society. That's a state. That's a government. But they'll say that you're racist. And then they'll say, well, no, you can't say that about Afghan refugees. I'm not. I'm saying it about some of the Afghan refugees because we are seeing that. We know that 20 Afghan refugees were sent into Montana, into Missoula, Montana. We know that at least one of them in Montana made a sexual assault and was arrested because of it, and then tried to hide and said he was visiting the United States, that he wasn't part of the program to protect the Afghan refugee program. He lied to police. That is on the record. That is a fact. Look at the Montana Standard and you will see this story. In fact, I have it right here in front of me, as published on October 21st. So they'll tell you that you're racist for pointing out facts in the news as they exist. And they will tell you that, no, women shouldn't be able to have a firearm to protect themselves. They don't need that, because that's what the police are for. By the way, the progressives are also telling you, like Cori Bush, that we have to defund our police because the police are intrinsically racist. And by the way, owning a firearm and the Second Amendment are intrinsically racist. So you should be undefended with no police. Even as we are introducing individuals into our community that are unvetted, that are potentially a danger to us, that we have seen at least a percentage of them are consistently a danger. Let me ask you, the women that are watching this, let me ask you, and the men as well, does that make you feel safer? Does that make you feel more confident in our government? That when I ask members of Congress, I ask state legislators, state assembly members, when I ask county executives and the governor of New York State, when I am asking them all a very simple question, and they are hiding from it and refuse to answer, let me ask you, does that make you feel more confident in the government? Does that make you feel more confident that they know what they're doing? Does it make you feel more confident that you're safe? Let me get to some of the comments. So Anne mentions, absolutely, there is suppression of speech on social media. It's formidable since there is such corner on the market between Twitter, Facebook, and the other internet overlords. They are so entrenched. Answering my question about, do you feel like you are being censored on social media? Because I can tell you, absolutely, I am. I have shown that over and over the years. We are absolutely censored here. Excuse me. And also goes on to say, I have used Parler, so I'm concerned any competitor platform will be shut down again like Parler was. Which is the answer. When competition is being introduced into this, which is very difficult to do, if you're at all successful, the action has been so far is shut them down, which would seem to violate the monopoly rules in the United States, anti-monopoly rules in the United States, anti-competition. So you make a great point, Anne. And she also agrees about what I'm saying about the Second Amendment and firearms, that this is important, especially now. And I really can't imagine, folks, and I'm going to get to your comment in 1 second, Tina, but I want you to ask you, do you know how many, I'll love this question. Do you know how many Afghan refugees are going to go to any and every state in the United States? There are 60,000 Afghan refugees in the United States right now. 16% of those people, roughly, that's about 8,000 people, we know who they are. We know 8,000 of them are people we know and have worked with in the United States. They have been vetted. 52,000 of those individuals, we have no idea who they are. We took them out of Afghanistan because they said they were afraid the Taliban would kill them because the Taliban are terrorists, and they are killing people in Afghanistan at this moment. We know that that is true. That is a fact. So we took them out and said, we will help save you because we don't believe in terrorism. We want to save you from the terrorists that Joe Biden had, just armed with 300,000 weapons. So we took them into the United States. And in the last 30 days, we are taking some of those 52,000 people and we are sending them to different states. And nobody knows where they are going. Not Governor Hochul, not the New York State Assembly, not the New York State Senate, not the members of Congress. No one seems to be able to answer any of the questions we have asked. And instead, they are saying, we don't want to talk to you. You're small. You're not the major news media. My answer to that isn't an answer. That isn't a response. The question is legitimate. The question is about national safety and in particular our local safety and community. Because this is the same question every person in every state that is watching this should be asking. And this is the same question that is going on right now in Britain, that is going on right now in France and in Germany. As people are remember, we weren't the only ones to leave Afghanistan, nor were we the only ones to leave Americans or the citizens behind in Afghanistan. I'm going to get to that in 1 second. And they're all asking the same question. Who are these people and are they safe? How many of them aren't safe to be part of our community? I think it's an important question. Tina mentions, technically, it's an ethnic people. No clue what race means. Well, I understand it is a matter of ethnicity, but you're going to hear the answer from most progressives who are parroting what they hear from the news media. They're going to say, well, you're just a racist, because that's the answer to everything. You're just a racist. I'm a black conservative, so that means I'm a racist. Just like Larry Elder. Oh, well, Larry Elder is the face of white supremacy. Larry Elder is as black as I am. He's as American as I am. And he's a white supremacist because he's a conservative? Does that make any sense? That's the only justification? Because there is no evidence of that. And I've seen on this program, when I ran for elected office, what was their answer? Well, you're just a racist. Great. I have well over 1,000 hours of content on YouTube alone. Not counting my own, I have a separate channel where I have written articles. I have written over 2,000 articles with over 2 million words. And they cannot pull out even one instance of racism. But yet they'll say, oh, well, you're just a racist. Because it's just the answer. It's a way to try and avoid actually dealing with anything. And I'm sure many of the politicians, like Congressman Antonio Delgado, yes, he's a Democrat, so what? And his answer will be the same as we heard back when Anthony Brindisi was in office. Well, you're a Republican. You're partisan. So I don't want to answer your question. That doesn't mean the question isn't a good question. It doesn't mean that the public safety is not potentially in danger. It just means they're avoiding it and they're trying to find the easiest way to avoid it. It's like saying, well, you're racist. Well, that's not answering the question. That's an opinion based on no facts, and that's just your way to dodge the question. The question remains, are we safe? Are we sure? How can you be sure when these people haven't been vetted? A process that takes 2 years, and in 30 days, they are in our communities. Doesn't answer the question. How much is this going to cost us? Who's paying for this? How many are coming? Where are they going? How can we be properly prepared to take these people? And I am sure the overwhelming number of the 52,000 are good, wholesome, regular people who just don't want to be surrounded by terrorists in Afghanistan. And I respect that, and I want to help them with that. And how can we welcome them into our communities if we don't even know who they are, when they're coming, how many are coming, and who's paying for it? Tell me, folks, is that an unreasonable set of questions to ask? Is that a partisan question that I am asking? Because if it is, I'll rework the question, but this is the question I have put before 15 members of our federal and state elected officials whose number one obligation, the reason why government exists, is to protect the public. And I am asking them a question about protecting the public. And their answer so far is, we don't want to talk to you. That's not an answer. Tina goes on to say, replying, she's answering us, coming from the girl with 5 profiles because 4 of them are in jail every month. Yes. So Tina's mentioning about our question about censorship of the average person, not just this channel and certain larger channels, but individual people. Are you feeling like you're censored? And Tina also highlights a headline that's on Yahoo. Biden administration reports foresees, quote, tens of millions of climate change refugees in coming decades. How can you be a refugee of climate change? I don't understand that. Climate change, technically and by definition, is global. There's nowhere in the world you can go to avoid it. And if there are tens of millions of people who are running from climate change, according to the progressives, the America is one of the worst countries in the world, as they keep telling us, which is why they keep changing things, why Superman no longer is about the American way. They changed Superman. They changed Superman in the comic books. He's no longer promoting America and the American way, which is insane. He was designed and created as a symbol of America, kind of like Captain America. And now I don't know what he's supposed to be standing for. And now these tens of millions of people, they're coming to America. Why would they come to the United States if we're such a horrible country? If we're so oppressive, if, like we're being told by on Reuters, that the Second Amendment is racist. If America is so racist and institutionally racist, and the Second Amendment is racist, why are people coming here? Why are there at this moment, there are, and I want to show it to you, there are 3,000 people. I got to wait for my system to come up. There are 3,000 people. Here it is. Now, this is the news according to the Star Advertiser. This is the left-leaning news that's being reported. That 2,000 individuals are coming, and most of them are from Cuba and from Haiti, as well as other countries, are coming to the United States. They are now in Mexico. This has been a wave that we know has been coming for well over a month. And there are, according to this article, which is the one you're going to see almost everywhere, it's from the Associated Press as of yesterday, October 23rd, saying that there's over 2,000 migrants, mainly from Central America, that are heading to the United States, and they're making their way through. They're coming from Honduras, El Salvador, Haiti. Tens of thousands that are in Mexico, and many of them are on their way to the United States right now. And if you want to hear the real story, now you have to go over to the Daily Mail. You have to leave the United States to hear the truth. And when you go to the Daily Mail, you'll see that it's over 3,000 of these migrants that are from Haiti, South America, and Central America. And they're on their way to Mexico City to get to the Texas border. And that they have already pushed past 400 law enforcement officials in Mexico, that they are forcing their way through, that they know by law they have to stop in Mexico and have to ask for asylum in Mexico, and instead they are running to the United States to rush through our border to join the 1.7 million illegal aliens that entered the United States almost entirely since February. Since Joe Biden took over with the office, the Oval Office. And they're carrying signs, they're carrying American flags, and they support Biden with signs that say Biden for all. If you want to know why they're coming, that's it. Biden for all. They're coming because of Joe Biden. Joe Biden has invited them in along with Kamala Harris, and that's why they're coming. And there's over 3,000 of them, and the major news media won't tell you that. Again, they're not giving you the full story. Oh, it's about 2,000. No, it's 3,000 or more. Oh, we have no idea why they're showing up, even though they have a sign that says Biden for all, and they're coming now. And the increase, the swarm of these individuals didn't start coming to the United States until February, when Joe Biden took the Oval Office. And Kamala Harris, who's in charge of our border security, remember, she was given that job in February, she's nowhere to be seen. Joe Biden hasn't been to the border. In fact, when he was talking on CNN this week in a town hall that was put out by CNN in a crowd that was hand-picked, a hand-picked crowd by CNN in a town hall, asked Joe Biden, and his answer about whether or not he's ever gone to the southern border is, well, I drove past it once in 2008. I really should go down there. This is our international policy. This is our border policy. Kamala's been there once, not even at the border, refused to see what's going on. We know for a fact that they are shipping kids. Excuse me. We know for a fact that they've been shipping kids. We know that they've done it in Tennessee. We know they're doing it in New York State. We've reported that to you, that in the middle of the night, they're taking kids from the border and shipping them all across the country, kind of like what they're doing with the Afghan refugees, just shipping them all around, not telling anyone about it before they actually show up, to hide the truth from you. And let me ask you, do you think that's important to know? Do you think someone should be asking these questions? Do you think that you should find out the truth? Do you think that you shouldn't have to go to the BBC or to the Daily Mail or any other United Kingdom presentation to find out what's happening in our own country? Tino says, oh, and the countries listed are high criminal people and terrorists. 11 countries were identified in the estimate of individuals that are coming to the United States to avoid climate change. at the high risk of climate disruption that could lead to a flood of migration. Those countries including Afghanistan, Colombia, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, India, Iraq, Myanmar, Nicaragua, North Korea, and Pakistan. You know what? Those are all countries that are absolutely in trouble, decimated countries, third world nations at this moment. They're already coming to America. So that's no different than why they've been coming already. It's no different than the 3,000 people who are on their way right now. In a news story that you're really not being told about. That these people are coming, even though they know they're breaking the law. They're coming to America because there is an open door. Because 15,000 Haitians knew for a fact it was better to live under a bridge in the United States than to live in Haiti or in Brazil or in Mexico. And of those 15,000, 12,000 were open door, walk into America perfectly fine. We now know that at least 20% of them may have the pandemic, and they're in the United States. We don't know where. They may or may not show up in the next 2 years to speak to ICE, to talk to our immigration department, talking about whether or not they have asylum in the next 2 years. Can you imagine that? And the only answer we have is, well, we asked them to show up. They may or may not show up. We'll find out in 2 years. In the meantime, we found out that perhaps 20% of them have the pandemic. We don't know where they are. We don't know who these people are. We just know they showed up at our door, and the Biden-Harris administration allowed them to walk right on in. And I tell you that is no different than what we're doing with the Afghan refugees. 52,000 people that we know nothing about. And the Biden administration is busy putting them out all over the place. Just like they put them in Missoula, in Montana, and a woman was raped. And we see that there was a soldier at Fort Bliss who was raped by a gang of men. We know that this has happened in New Mexico. We know this has happened in Texas. We know this has happened in Wisconsin. I'm going to ask you, you know what's going to be really interesting? When the news media, the major news media, if they don't pick up this story, which at least one major news media source that I've spoken to might take this story. They're not going to give me credit for it, by the way. They're never going to mention my name. They're never going to mention the fact that I've sent out letters. They're going to say nothing about me or this channel. They're going to say nothing about the fact that we have been following this story and trying to get our elected officials to answer these questions since September. They're not going to mention any of that. They're going to cover the story as if they just suddenly found it through their investigations, and that here it is, they're going to present it their way without mentioning any credit to us. That's fine. They're going to ask some questions of some politicians. If they do that, that'll be fantastic. And I'll be happy. Just as long as the story gets covered by the major news media, which have millions of dollars more than I have on this channel, because I'm only me. I don't have millions of dollars. I don't have thousands of employees. It's just me. And if they cover this, that's fantastic. But what will probably happen is they won't cover this, and then they will turn around and say, we are shocked that Afghan refugees were allowed into New York State. I don't know how many of them. And then there is going to be a woman that's going to be sexually assaulted, perhaps a minor that is going to be assaulted, perhaps by an individual or perhaps by a gang. And they're going to be absolutely shocked. They're going to be amazed that this happened. And they're going to say, this, you know what, this doesn't happen though. This is a one-off. This is shocking news. And they're never going to tell you that 15 elected officials were asked this question months ahead of time, and they refused to answer. They refused to consider your safety. They refused to let you know that they are aware of the problem and that they are looking out for your best interest. Instead, they'd rather be silent to protect their politics. Am I upset about this? Absolutely. And my answer to every woman and everyone who has a child, Teach them how to use a firearm properly. For the women, please get yourself a firearm so that you can protect yourself properly. I wish I could tell you which community they're going to go to. We have no idea. None. We don't know where they're going. I know where there's rumors. I can tell you that from the news sources that I have spoken to, the major media news sources that I have spoken to, they have told me, well, we think there might be some people going to Onondaga County, and that's the only answer that I have. A rumor in news media that has no basis of truth. We have no idea. I have no idea where they're going to go, how many people are going to go. So I have to look out to you. And I have to say, to every other single state, especially every blue state in the nation, you're probably going to get some of these 52,000 individuals. And it is literally a roll of the dice on who you're getting, because we don't know. And you might get some of these people who have been convicted. And you're saying, well, Mike, if they were really a problem, we wouldn't let them into the United States. And here's the thing you really need to think about. And folks, if you disagree with anything I'm saying, you can call on 607-242-1582. You can leave me a comment like Tina and like Ann and like Jason and like Mike Bowie and so many others have been doing. If you disagree with me, please let me know. But I'm going to ask you a very serious question here. Let's assume that there is vetting going on. Let's say that our government knows for a fact that these individuals are a danger, and they're going to let them stay anyway. Let's say that there is a percentage. Let's say there's 0.5% of the 52,000 people. Let's say it's 500 in total. 500 people out of the 52,000 are questionable. These are people who have been denied visas to enter the United States before. Yes, there are people in the crowd that have been denied the visas, have been denied the ability to come to the United States before, that are on terrorist watch lists, and they are in the United States at this moment. Yes, that is a fact. So let's assume there's only 500 of them. Let me ask you a question. Why are we letting them in our country? If we have 500 people who have been denied visas in the past, who may or may not be on terrorist watch lists, who are on no-fly lists, these are individuals that maybe committed crimes in Afghanistan that we can confirm, that they have committed sexual assault in Afghanistan that we can confirm. Why are they in the United States at this moment? If we know this, we do know this about some of these people, why are they still here? Because they're not going to send a single person back to Afghanistan. Because then we'd be sending them back to the terrorists, to the Taliban. And Joe Biden doesn't want to have to admit, the Biden administration does not want to say, we had to deport people, one, because they should have never been in our country in the first place, and two, we're not going to send them into terrorism. So the United States is going to keep every single one of those people who are dangers to our community. And I think this is part of the reason why no elected official wants to answer the question about the vetting. They don't want to answer the questions we have asked because they don't want to admit that even if we know that these people are criminals, we're going to keep them in the United States. Because the Biden administration doesn't want it to say, oh, we let a known criminal, a known sexual predator into the United States. And by the way, we're letting them stay in the United States because we won't send anyone back into Afghanistan where there are terrorists. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you don't. Maybe you think, no, Mike, the United States, no, we'd deport them. We would absolutely deport them. No, we wouldn't. We don't deport anyone anymore. Well, that's not true. Let me take that back. That is an overreaction. That is an overstatement. That's not true. We do deport people. Very, very few. Very, very few. Instead, we're more likely to keep them in our country. And yes, Mike, that was actually the next thing I was going to mention, because you are absolutely right. And we have let in 52,000 people that we know nothing about. Some percentage of them are more than willing to abuse women, And they are abusing women. They are assaulting women and minors. That is a fact. It has happened in 4 states, and soon, and God help me, it's going to happen in 5 states very shortly. It's just going to happen because we don't know who these people are. And we brought in some bad people, and they're going to let them in. But in the meantime, we have an unknown number. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin admitted as he spoke to Congress, as we have covered on this program before, that there are hundreds, maybe thousands of Americans who are in Afghanistan. Let me look at it from a different way. I want to show you something. This is from the UK, the Daily Mirror. They're exclusive, as reported October 23rd. British Afghans beg the United Kingdom to save them from the Taliban as families are forced to live off of scraps. This is their reporting. Over 500 British Afghans are believed to be stranded in the country following the abrupt withdrawal of Allied troops in August. And they are terrified because the Taliban are going door to door hunting for those with British links. And the British were more successful at getting their citizens out of Afghanistan than the American government was. That is a fact. We covered that. The United States government purposefully, knowingly left Americans in Afghanistan. We were initially told in July that there were 10 to 15,000 Americans in Afghanistan. By August 31st, the numbers suddenly changed. We were told we got 5,500 Americans out of Afghanistan and that there were only 6,000 in the entire country. Somehow we went from 10,000 as an absolute minimum to 6,000 as the absolute maximum. And even if you went with that, we had 5,500 Americans that we took out of Afghanistan by August 31st. That leaves 500 Americans in Afghanistan. And now we're told there's less than 100. We didn't bring them home. We brought home 85 Americans. 85 Americans since August 31st. 85. When you take 85 minus 500, even with Common Core math, you get more than 100. There is no way you get 100 people in Afghanistan that are American citizens when we know at least 500, according to the government's numbers coming from Secretary of State Blinken, Antony Blinken himself, saying that there was 500 Americans in Afghanistan, and now we're told we got 85 Americans home, mostly not because of the State Department. That would leave you with 400, and they're telling us it's 100. And we know that the British were more successful. They had less people in Afghanistan. They got more of their people home, more of the British natives, nationals. They got them out of Afghanistan. And at the moment, we are finding out that there are 500 British still stuck there, and they had fewer people to get out, and they were more successful at doing it. And you're supposed to believe that there's only 100 Americans in Afghanistan? And by the way, not one Democrat will mention Afghanistan. Not one American, not one Democrat in America, any elected official, will mention Afghanistan. They will not mention the Americans that have been discarded in Afghanistan. Not one. Look at Antonio Delgado. He is the congressman for the New York 19th District. We have been asking him nonstop since September 1st about the Americans lost in Afghanistan. We have asked him to make some kind of comment about that. We have asked them what is being done about that. To this day, this is now October 24th, for more than, it's now 55 days, and he has yet to say a single thing. He refuses to answer our question. He refuses to acknowledge that there are Americans who have been discarded. He has forgotten the Americans in Afghanistan, which makes me wonder, which is why I understand why he doesn't acknowledge and will not answer the question about the Afghan refugees. He doesn't care. Because apparently he doesn't care about Americans. Joe Biden doesn't care about Americans because, I can only make that conclusion, look at the evidence. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Biden administration will not talk about Americans left in Afghanistan. They won't mention it. They won't talk about it. There's no news about it. They have been forgotten completely. They do not exist according to the Biden-Harris administration, which is why you don't hear anything about it. And not one Democrat will bring up that subject. Not one Democrat will talk about it. Not one Democrat will say anything about the Americans that were left in Afghanistan and efforts to bring them back home. They will not talk about it. It's been 55 days. And you think that they're going to, those same people who will not live up to the obligation to protect Americans that they discarded in a terrorist hellhole under the Taliban, you think they're going to protect you and tell you and warn you that there are some Afghans that we know nothing about that we believe are more than willing to attack women and minors, children under the age of 16. And you think they're going to, are you surprised that they're not answering me? Mike Bowie mentions, is it really too much to ask our president to tell the truth once? I'm just looking to get members of Congress, members of the New York State Assembly and the New York State Legislature, the New York State Senate, the governor of New York, the appointed governor of New York. I'm just trying to get them to answer a simple question. And they don't want to answer it. I've been doing this 15 years. I know some of these elected officials personally. I have their phone numbers. I know them personally. I've spoken with them in public, personally, on a personal level, before they got elected and after they got elected. And they won't answer a question from me. And if they know me for 15 years doing political commentary and covering news, and I'm asking them a question, and they have my personal phone numbers, they have my personal email, they know me by person, they know where my house is, they've been to my house. They have been to my house. This, where my office is right now, they have been here. They know where I live, and they won't answer me, even on a personal level, off the record. What are the odds they're going to answer you? What are the odds that they're actually trying to take care of you? Hot Chicks mentions, and by the way, hello Hot Chicks, don't believe anything they say and they can never lie to you. Well, that's true. And I'm not saying they're all bad people. I'm not saying that these are evil demons. And mind you, I haven't mentioned whether they're Democrats, Republicans, progressives, libertarians, because the answer is all of the above. I asked questions of every party, and I know these individuals from every party and have known them for years. And so the fact that that these are people who know me personally and have done interviews with me, they have responded to other questions we have asked on this channel, they respect us as a member of the press because we are, and have been doing this for well over a decade, and they know it, and they still won't answer. You should be very, very upset. And again, I will give credit. There are two people who have answered us, Assemblywoman Donna Pardo and Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Out of 15 members of government, not the appointed governor, Kathy Hochul, not County Executive Jason Garnar. I haven't heard anything yet from County Executive Molinaro. I haven't heard anything from Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. It's all public. We have published the letter we have sent out. And in fact, letters that we have sent out. And if they do respond, we will verbatim publish every word they say. We will convey with full context exactly what they say to our questions. And we will make sure that you are informed. Because it's a matter of safety. Matter of safety for the community locally, as a state, and as a nation. Because the news media is doing no benefit to you. Our politicians are doing no benefit to you to leave you in the dark and to treat you the same way that they are treating Americans in Afghanistan right now, which is they aren't. They aren't thinking about you. They aren't addressing your problems. They don't care. I've never seen a government so callous as the Biden-Harris administration and the current elected officials in New York State. And yes, I believe they are callous. I think this is cruel. I think this is punishment. I think they are harming the public by not answering, not being prepared, and not doing anything to prepare or allow you to be prepared. They didn't tell you about the shortages. We, on this channel in February, we told you to be prepared that this second half of 2021, the economy was going to be in danger. We published that back on February 17th. It is a fact. We told you. We spent our time and we made sure that you knew about it. We are a small news media company. I couldn't reach millions of people. We told you. The lawmakers, our elected officials who knew this, who saw this, who are aware of the information better than we are, didn't say a word to you. Told you everything was okay, everything was fine. We're telling you there have been women who have been attacked in 4 states by a very small group of people we know nothing about. They're not answering your questions again. Will it be 4 months from now that I'm going to be reporting that in New York State, women are being assaulted by Afghan refugees because they are unvetted? I don't want to have that story. I don't want to have to convey that story. I want that not to have to be necessary. I am imploring these elected officials, and I am imploring you to get an answer. I understand. Many of them may have no idea what's going on. It seems that the Biden-Harris administration has no idea what they are doing. That right now, the Department of Homeland Security has no idea how to vet these people properly. That they are completely lost, and that this is a snafu, as we would say in the military jargon. And that they're just sending them out everywhere. I understand people are lost. But I'm asking them to make a plan and to give that plan to the American people, to actually do their jobs and to investigate this and make sure the American people are as prepared and protected as possible. By the way, I will say again, get our American citizens back from Afghanistan and bring them home. I say that to the British government when we're talking about their citizens. There's over 500 British citizens that are in Afghanistan at this moment. Get them home. This is the responsibility, the primary responsibility of government, and they need to live up to it. And we need to hold them accountable to that. And I'm only saddened by the fact that this channel is not, we're not a CNBC. We're not a CNN. We're not a Daily Wire or a Daily Caller. We're not millions of people strong. And I can live with that. But it means that when we're talking about important things like this, please like, share, and share this. Let people know. Ask them to subscribe so that they can see these articles. Send them these videos so that they can ask themselves. There's only so much we can do here, and we are doing everything that we can. We're trying to get every single member of the news media that we have access to, that we have influence with, to try and cover this story, to get you answers. We aren't asking for credit. We're not asking them to mention our names. We're not asking them to let anyone know that we broke this story, that we are the ones leading this. We're not asking for that. We're asking for answers. That's it. I don't think that's a lot to ask for. And I can tell you, it is the obligation of the news media and elected officials to provide that to you. And when they don't do that, there is a problem. Whether that's a political problem or whether it's because of a lack of efficiency, that they are too inefficient, they are too lackadaisical, they are too busy worried about politics rather than worried about their priority to protect the public, I do not know. But whatever their reason is, it is not good enough. And they must be held to the fire. And we will do that. We have been doing that. We will continue to do that. Because eventually, they're going to, the day, and I hate to say this, but one of these days, this story is going to come up. There is going to be a headline like we saw in Montana. If things continue in the way that they are at this moment, we're going to have a headline like in Montana, like in Wisconsin, like in Texas, like in New Mexico, and we're going to see these politicians going, I had no possible idea. There's no way I could have known this was going to happen. I am absolutely shocked. You're going to hear Governor Hochul, appointed Governor Hochul, say, this is incredible. We could have never known this. How could this possibly happen? We're going to do everything we can to protect you, and they're going to be lying to your face. Because I will show the evidence that I have made them aware of this since September of 2021, September 1st of 2021. And I am continuing to make them aware of this, and they will lie to your face on major news media telling you, well, we had no way of knowing. We could have never known this. This is a shock to us. No, it's not. You're liars. And I don't want to have that video. I don't want to have that reporting. It doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen. All they need to do is go back, say, what's the plan, make a plan, and enforce that plan. Part of that plan being vetting the 52,000 people, we have no idea who they are, and finding out who are they. And are they problematic? And yes, if they are known criminals, if they are individuals that we believe were terrorists, if they were people who we would not let into the United States under any other circumstance, send them back to the Taliban, back to Afghanistan. Because we have no obligation to have individuals who would sexually assault minors in our nation. We have no obligation to that. That is not something we need to take into our nation and to assault our children with. Now, if you think I'm wrong, if you think that's racist, if you think that's discriminatory, if you are upset, if you're offended by hearing that, hey, please leave me a message. Send me a message. I'm live. Call in 607-242-1582. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why this is offensive. Tell me why it's more offensive to hear that your government is failing you, that they are actively avoiding doing their jobs, that they're not just inept, but they are actively causing a problem for you and your family. Please tell me how what I'm saying is more offensive than what they're doing. I'm not going to beat up on you. I know, I'm very excitable. I'm passionate. I believe that this is an important issue. And I will say it with strength and energy. So don't let that scare you. I will listen to you. If you think I am wrong, if you think what I am saying is inappropriate or inaccurate, if you're offended by that, please let me know why. I want to hear your voices. Maybe I missed something. Maybe there's something about this that I don't understand. I mean, that's why I've asked the question of the 15 elected officials at our federal and state levels of government. I have asked them because I want an answer. Because you, deserve and they are obligated to provide you with an answer. That's all I'm asking for. I haven't made a final judgment. I am making a judgment based on what they are not doing. I am making a judgment based on the fact that they are hiding from this, that they are avoiding answering this, that they are running away from their obligations, and that they are running away from the American people. That I am definitely making a judgment on that. And I will praise the individuals that do their job. I have praised Assemblywoman Donna Loparo for doing her job. I have praised Congresswoman Claudia Tenney for doing her job. I will praise any of them for doing their job. But they need to do it. And I'm willing to hear from anyone. And again, and just to let everyone know, again, as I have put in the letters, I have an open door policy. Any of these politicians are more than willing or more than happy to call into the show or to contact me and set up a time to do an interview to answer these questions in as much time as they need. They can take as long as they want to answer the questions that we have presented. I have an open door. I will do it on Zoom. I will do it in person. I will travel to them if they want. They can come to our studio and do it. I will give them as much time as they need, and I will present every single word they say, unedited, verbatim, as is the policy of this channel when we do interviews, verbatim. And they know it. And the door is open. And any one of them can show up at any time they want to. Now, let me ask you. I know, I've kind of monologued a little bit. Let me ask you, do you think I'm wrong? Do you think is this partisan? Is it partisan to ask them these questions? Do you think it is? I truly want to know what you think. Do you think this is important? Let me ask you, which one do you think is more important to you? Which one is going to affect your life more directly? Is it going to be whether or not Alec Baldwin, do you think whatever happens to Alec Baldwin is more important and will more directly affect your life? Or do you think that the Afghan refugees we know nothing about are going to affect your life more? Which one has a higher potential of affecting you and your family? Especially if you're a woman, especially if you have minor children. Which one do you think is going to affect your life more directly? Which one is the higher priority? Which one should the news be more focused on? Because I can tell you, right now, it's Alec Baldwin. Right now, the news media is spending more time talking about Alec Baldwin, and they are spending more time apologizing for Alec Baldwin than they are telling you that there is a potential problem that's going to be coming to your door, just like it did in Montana. That seems to terrify me. But maybe you think I'm wrong. And I am more than willing to hear, how am I wrong? Hot Chicks, you mentioned that you don't look at it like that. How do you look at it? Tell me what you mean. Honestly, I'm wondering, what does that mean? How in the example I'm giving, and maybe it's because am I giving the example wrong? Is it not right now? Yesterday, we had the news. It was October 21st. We found out about the Montana sexual assaults. And I sent out letters. Yesterday, we heard about Alec Baldwin and the shooting. No one is talking about the sexual assault in Montana that has happened now for the fourth time in the fourth state. We are hearing about Alec Baldwin 24 hours nonstop. It's on every news media channel. Choosing one over, I understand. And Hot Chicks mentions choosing one over the other. I don't want it to be one or the other. I think the news media, just 24 hours in a news media day. The news media channels, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, they're on 24 hours a day. I do 3 shows a week plus the Sunday show for 2 hours, 3 hours. Okay. That's all I do. So I have a couple of hours out of a week. They're on 24/7. They have thousands in the staff, and they have millions of dollars to afford equipment I wish I could possibly have. They're making a choice. I'm covering both stories. Little old me, this small company that we have is covering both stories. The major news media, every single one of them, can't. They're not. You mean to tell me in 24 hours over the last 3 days, they couldn't figure out to spend a minute and a half, which is about as long as they give to any news story. They use sound bites. In 24 hours a day for 36 hours, they haven't been able to figure out where to put in a minute and a half, their normal news story length, a message or information about the Afghan refugees. But they have been able to dedicate in the last 24 hours more than 5 hours of content talking about Alec Baldwin. They have made a choice. The news media made their choice. Our politicians made their choice. There are more politicians right now talking about Alec Baldwin. I guarantee you, more people are talking about Alec Baldwin in our elected officials than are talking about the sexual assaults of women in 4 states. They have made a choice, and the choice isn't in your best interest. It is not a choice for the American people. That is what I believe. Now, hot chicks, tell me, when I explain it like that, does it make sense? Not that you don't have to tell me that you agree with me. I'm not asking for people to agree with me. You can tell me that you don't agree, but do you understand why I say they've made a choice? My boy says it's all smoke and mirrors to cover up Biden's incompetence. Yes, because this all comes from the incompetent manner in which Joe Biden forced the world out of Afghanistan. It all comes from the way that Joe Biden empowered the Taliban, and that they are now the only terrorist. They're now a terrorist country with a terrorist army funded by the United States. And the United States is about to give them $10 billion. We are in negotiations to give a terrorist nation that was created by the Biden-Harris administration $10 billion. $10 billion. May not sound like a lot compared to the $3 trillion deal that's trying to be worked out right now in the United States, but Afghanistan is nowhere near what America is in any sense. Population size, everything. $10 billion is a huge amount of money. We gave $86 million to Hamas in April. The Biden administration gave $86 million to Hamas through the Palestinian government, which is Hamas. They bought 4,000 rockets and tried to kill women and children in Israel with those 4,000 rockets. The response in the United States has been from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She tried to get rid of the one thing that actually protected the people of Israel, the Iron Dome. And now, so when you say, well, $10 billion isn't a lot, $86 million had an attack of 4,000 rockets against the people of Israel. It's a terrifying amount of money. $10 billion is an insane amount of money. But again, this comes back to the Biden administration has made no sense. They have been completely inept and incompetent at every step. And you may love Joe Biden. Maybe you voted for Joe Biden. Maybe you were like Bill Maher and you said, we have to vote in Joe Biden because Orange Man bad and I'm afraid of mean tweets. Fantastic. Then own this is the consequence of that. And those consequences haven't stopped. Those consequences were that we empowered a terrorist organization to become a terrorist nation. And in doing that, we have now endangered the American people on American soil with individuals we know nothing about that we are spreading across our country. And the consequence is that women and children are being attacked because of it. And I believe the only reason why the numbers are so small at this moment is because they haven't gotten to every state. Most of them, there are only maybe 1,000 Afghans, maybe 1,000 who have been sent to different states across the country. We don't even know. No one is giving us the numbers. No one is answering this. Could be just 100 people, could be 1,000 people. I know it's not 50,000 people that have been sent out to different states. Imagine when we get 52,000 people we don't know, that we did not check the background of, and we have them in every single state. In your community, what are they going to do? It's a question that the people in the United Kingdom are asking right now. It's a question that in France they're asking right now. In Germany and Australia, they're asking that question right now. And I have yet to hear any government that says they have an answer. In fact, they're all avoiding it. Mike Bowie mentions, what if what you said about Kamala Harris taking over after the midterms, then it all starts to make sense? Well, yes. And for those who have not heard me say this, and I've been saying this for months, maybe a year, it is our firm belief and our prediction that roughly the second week of November, somewhere around there, right after the 2022 midterm elections, Joe Biden will be removed from office because of the 25th Amendment, and they will replace him with Kamala Harris, which will take place January of 2023, and she will then carry out the full term and then try and run 2 more times. It is their goal for her to be able to have 10 years as president, and I do think that's going to happen. And maybe they want Joe to be as incompetent as possible so that November next year, in 2022, when they say, you know, we have to use the 25th Amendment. We can't handle this. He's destroying America. And everyone's going to go, thank God, we're saved. Yes, Joe Biden has lost his mind. He's incompetent and he's inept. Yes, get him out because anything can be better. And then in comes Kamala Harris, which I don't think is going to be any better. I think she'll be worse. But she'll come in on this big rush of, oh, hooray, yes, look, they're going to save us. They're going to protect us. They're going to help America. Kamala gets to be in. It's the first black and minority woman is now president. We've broken the glass ceiling. Yay, everything's going to be better now. And the world's going to be fine. The rainbows are coming out. The unicorns are back. Yay. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. That's the story they want us to believe. That's the message they're going to give us. It's not the reality of what's going to happen. Just like they told us, we get rid of Orange Man bad, Biden's going to come in. We're going to be all unified. We're all going to be unified. Yeah, if you listen to podcasts of the Lotus Eaters, I want to give them credit for this. The answer is, yeah, we're all unified in thinking that Joe Biden is inept and incompetent and losing his mind. There's the unity we have, because there is no other unity in the United States right now. Not when I'm putting out articles, and I'm going over with you on articles that are coming from the NPR telling us that the Second Amendment is racist. Not when we have to see that there are politicians, 15 politicians at federal and state levels are avoiding talking about the sexual assault of women and the potential of that happening in New York State. Not when I see that we have things that are going on in our country that are falling apart. Where we're being told today that inflation is going to be hyperinflation. We may be reaching stagflation, which is an event that happened in my lifetime back in the 1970s, that we're about to go through that again, which was not fun the first time, I can tell you that. From personal experience, having lived it, it's not fun. You won't enjoy this, kids. You're not going to like this. And we're being told that even though we knew this information back in February, 8 months ago. Yeah, I have no confidence. And I don't think most people have confidence. I believe a recent poll, I think a Gallup poll, had just showed that we have, the American people have 36% confidence in the major news media. These are the reasons why. That's almost an all-time low. It's, I think, the second lowest amount of confidence that Americans had in our government. I believe that during the Vietnam War, Americans had more confidence in our government than we do right now. Why am I wrong? How could I be wrong? Or maybe you think we should be talking about Alec Baldwin. And again, even if we're looking at the news that's meant to cover up the news we could be talking about, even when we're talking about Alec Baldwin, the story that they want us to talk about, the story that they want us to be distracted with, and the potential for that story to be an informative story telling us about the safety of firearms, and instead of letting us know how to better protect ourselves, and that the first rule of gun safety is don't point, the first rule is check the firearm to make sure that it's unloaded. The second rule is don't point at anyone unless you plan to pull the trigger. These are the first two rules of gun safety. And we could use this as a teaching moment, a lesson for the nation. And instead of doing any of that, they are instead telling us that Alec Baldwin is a victim. Woe is me. And they're trying to give us reasons why he should not be charged with the crime that he committed, because it is a crime. And if you think I'm being unfair to Alec Baldwin, again, I ask you, comment. Tell me why. Send me a text, a chat, or call into the show at 607-242-1582. The phones are on. The phone is on. Let me know what you think. Why do you think that? Hang on one second. Sorry about that, folks. If you think Alec Baldwin is innocent, that he should not be charged with the crime, let me know. If you think that that's more important than protecting women from the potential threat coming from the Afghan refugees, tell me why. I'm not here to beat you up. Yes, I'm passionate. But as you heard when Jason called in, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to have a conversation with you like a human being with respect. As long as you give respect, you will get respect back, and I will be happy to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your voices. I can't wait to hear, and I know some of our listeners over in the United Kingdom, like Agent Black and a few others, I want to hear what is it that the United Kingdom government is saying about this, because I know they're facing the same problem. And I want to hear from people in France. What's France doing about this problem, about the assaults that are happening on their women and their minors? And in Germany, where they're having the same problem, where they're getting the assaults on their women. Are they more worried about Alec Baldwin? And to be honest, I know they have some other issues and other celebrities that they're worried about. But again, whatever the equivalent is at the moment, in England, in France, in Germany, in Australia, is that more important than protecting Are women protecting children? I don't know. I don't think that that's equivalent. I think that doesn't balance out. I think there's a problem here. And I'm holding these officials accountable. And you can go to the video. We'll have a link to it in the description at the end of the show, where you can see everything I had to say. You'll see the letter that I sent out word for word. You'll see what it is. It is nonpartisan, and I will show it to you so that you can see it, that this is a relevant, reasonable question for the news media to ask of our elected officials without any partisanship whatsoever, and that they are refusing to answer this. Almost all of them. I want to be fair. Almost all of them, not all of them. There is one person so far who has responded. And Representative Antonio Delgado sent me out his weekly newsletter. Didn't respond, but did make sure to send me his weekly newsletter to say that he's great. Those are the two responses we have received since we sent this letter out on October 21st. One actual answer from Assemblywoman Donald Pardo and Congressman Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th District, who sent us his weekly report saying that he's great and doing a great job. Even though he won't mention Afghanistan, he won't answer any questions about trying to get Americans back from Afghanistan back to America safely, nor will he answer any question about the Afghan refugees, whether they are vetted or not, and who's coming to New York State, who's paying for it, and are we safe? Are our communities safe? He won't answer that. That he won't answer. And do I hold him accountable for that? Hell yes, I do. Hell yes, I do. And we should all. And his excuse is, well, the major media isn't asking me that question, so I can ignore it. No, that is not an answer. That is not an answer. That is not an appropriate answer. Because he doesn't answer. These politicians don't answer to polls. They don't answer to the news media. They answer to you, the public. That's where their obligation lies with. Not their political party, not the news media, not the internet overlords. Claudia, and to respond, Claudia Tenney is upset about the issue. And the last that I heard is she is looking into this to give us a better answer. She has no official statement at this moment, which is why I haven't mentioned it yet. Again, I've given you the official statements I have received. I have not received, and if someone speaks to me privately, I'm not going to mention any private conversations that any elected official has had with me or not had with me. That's just because that's private. And we respect any off-the-record comments that we may receive. But on the record, yeah, we have a couple people who are looking into it. And we have Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th, who will soon be part of the New York 22nd, who is saying, hey, I'm great. Look at my record. Don't mind the fact that I won't answer any questions of the constituents. He is more worried about paying attention to polls, apparently, than he is to paying attention to the people. It's kind of sad. Kathy Hochul, appointed governor Kathy Hochul, is more worried about her reelection than she is about taking care of the public. No one, not her office, not she, has had a single thing to say so far. And for those who think I'm only picking on Democrats, Lee Zeldin has yet to answer me. Mark Molinaro has yet to answer me. I have asked Republicans and Democrats that are in elected offices about this. And I have not heard anything. And I've told you everything I've heard. And I put out a video on everything I heard. And as we get updated, I will let you know more. But they're avoiding this. They're running from this. I know. I beat this down. I think it's that serious an issue to talk about. I really do. But I also wanted to mention that our media is they're so confused right now. They have so little idea of what they're doing. I mean, do you remember, you may have noticed this, on October 20th, the news media was very busy telling us, oh, you know what, Republicans are so evil. They shot down the Freedom to Vote Act. Joe Manchin was part of this. He's fighting for Democrats. He's doing such a great job. And then the very same Democrats, the very same Democratic media, The Intercept, come out with a complete hit job on Joe Manchin. This is how confused the left is. This is how confused our news media is. They don't know if they're happy about Joe Manchin or upset with him. They don't know if they should support him or attack him. So they're doing both. They're so worried about politics and their polls and their power that they're not worried about what's happening to America. I mean, this is a hit job. Dan Boguslaw, I think I got his last name right, from The Intercept, puts out this article. It has absolutely zero relevance to anything that's going on right now. It has zero relevance to the Freedom to Vote Act. It has zero relevance to our budget and the fact that we are going bankrupt as a nation. Instead, it's punishing Joe Manchin, Senator Joe Manchin, and saying, in 2010, Joe Manchin was not a great guy. 2006, Joe Manchin wasn't a great guy. 2010, Joe Manchin had problems. None of this has anything to do with today. None of this has anything to do with what's going on today. 2010, 2011, 2006. Manchin wants to be in 1960. What has this got to do with 2021? Nothing. It talks about his kids and their jobs. 1992. None of this has anything to do with what's going on today. This is what the news media is occupied with. This is what The Intercept is telling you. And this is supposed to be a news media source of note, an important record. It's supposed to be right up there with the New York Times. And they are busy making personal attacks. In the meantime, our elections are in question, and our finances, our economy is in question. And they're busy, and when they're not busy trying to promote their political ideology, then what we're getting is they're talking about Alec Baldwin. I'm sorry, he's not that big an issue. There are bigger things to worry about in this world. I'm not that, you know what? Alec Baldwin needs to be arrested. I agree more with this. I agree with this meme more than I do this article from the Associated Press. Alec Baldwin committed a crime. He needs to be thrown in jail. We need to remind people to be safe with firearms. Period. That story is done. Why they're speaking about that for 5 hours over the last 24 hours instead of important issues, I don't know. Why are they busy telling us about Joe Manchin and why they're making attacks on Joe Manchin when there are people that are lost in Afghanistan that the American news media won't even talk about? You have no idea how many Americans are in Afghanistan right now. And the American news media won't even ask a question. They don't even talk about it. It doesn't exist anymore. Those people are dead to the American news media and the Biden administration and to Democrats. They won't tell you that we should be, they won't even ask the question if the Federal Reserve recognizes that we shouldn't allow lawmakers and policymakers to own individual stocks because of the implied bias that they have, the insider trading that is going on. Why won't Congress do that? They won't even ask you about that. They will not even talk about that. They won't tell you about what's going on in Facebook, that in Facebook itself, that they are having problems, that this is violation of Article 230. They won't even talk to you about that. And I didn't even get to the fact that the national government, the NIH, under Dr. Fauci, has taken your tax money, and this is really upsetting, folks. I'm really upset about this. That they're taking your tax dollars so that in Africa, in Tunisia, that they can do some horrendous tests on puppies. This is pretty harsh, folks. They are literally allowing sandflies to eat puppies alive. And they took $375,000 of your tax dollars and gave it to doctors in Tunisia to do that. Something that they could never get away with in America. No one would ever let them get away with this. PETA would be losing their mind. By the way, who's the only one talking about this story? According to NewsGuard, Republicans are concerned about puppies. And the regular and the left-leaning news don't really care. They don't want to talk about it. Because Dr. Fauci is being named. Because it's the NIH. The same people responsible for the pandemic medication. And as was mentioned by Russell Brand, as we covered it earlier, if you do not trust, if you are shown the bias of the news media, if you are shown the bias of the government, then you're going to question all the things they are doing. Well, guess what? I have a question about the NIH. If they are willing to fund experiments on puppies, allowing them to be eaten alive, and they gave our tax money to this, something that they know expressly would never be allowed in the United States. And if they're willing to do that, yes, I have questions about everything else they are doing. And Hot Chicks mentions that this is pure evil and that I'm worried about the Afghans. Yeah, I am. Yes, this is another story that I'm very upset about. And yes, I can be upset about more than one story at once. I am pissed off about the Afghans, but I'm also pissed off that we are literally funding research on puppies. Where's PETA? Where's the national news on this? And you won't see it. They're going to bury this story because it mentions Dr. Fauci, it mentions the NIH, and therefore they don't want to talk about this. They don't want to tell you that these people who are supposedly nice and good, they're the golden saviors. People are like, Fauci's a hero. Well, your hero, Dr. Fauci, is funding experiments on puppies. That is a fact. It's not a question. It's not an if. It's not a maybe. It's a fact. What do you say about that hero now? He's a pretty flawed hero, if you ask me. And if he is willing to allow experiments and fund experiments on puppies, do you think he would allow an experiment on a bat? Do you think that when Dr. Ron Paul, a senator, has pointed out, when Dr. Rand Paul pointed out that Dr. Fauci, under the NIH, was funding gain of function research, which allows diseases to expand and go to other people. And then you tell me that same organization, that same leadership is willing to cruelly experiment on puppies and fund this abuse. Yeah, I think they're capable of doing just about anything, and I don't think they care about anyone. If you think I'm wrong, if you think Dr. Fauci's a great guy, if you think he's a hero, then tell me why I'm wrong. If you think it's okay to experiment on puppies with your tax dollars, please tell me why. If you think that they're so proud of this, why wouldn't they mention this before? If they think they're doing the right thing, why was this hidden from the public? It's terrifying to me. I don't even know the words to express on this. I love my dog. He's a great dog. Khan is, you don't hear him right now. Occasionally you hear him in the background. He's a wonderful puppy. He's really great. And I call him a puppy. He's 8 years old. He's a little dog, 15 pounds. I love him. He's a wonderful dog. And I am terrified that there are people in the United States. Dr. Fauci has authorized and allowed people around the world to take a puppy like mine, like yours, and said, oh yeah, let sand fleas eat them alive. And they cut out their vocal cords on the dogs so that they didn't have to listen to them bark. You think I'm kidding about that? You think I'm kidding about that? This is how dark this story is. Some 44 beagle puppies used in North Africa laboratory. Some of the dogs had their vocal cords removed so scientists could work without the incessant barking. That's just terrifying. That's just dark. That's sad. Yeah. That's horrific. In the meantime, by the way, the AP and the major news media and 167 sources, 167 members of organizations of the news media want to tell you that Alec Baldwin is innocent of a crime that he committed, but 23 sources, only 10 of the left-leaning news media, which is the majority of news in America, are willing to tell you that Dr. Fauci authorized the payment of $357 of your money, of your taxes, to allow 44 beagles to have their vocal cords removed so that scientists didn't need to hear them as they begged and pleaded for their lives as they were being eaten by sandflies. Eaten alive by sandflies. They don't want to tell you that. News media is avoiding this story like a plague, but they can't stop talking about Alec Baldwin. And there are more people, and to their credit, there are more news media sources right now that are talking about this abuse of puppies than are willing to talk about the sexual assault of women in Afghanistan. Excuse me, by Afghan refugees. There are more people who are willing to, the news media is absolutely more willing. 167 sources, all up, which is basically almost everybody, and especially on the left, there's something like 80 news sources. Something like 80 news sources, 60. I don't want to do the math right now. 15, 5. So what, 50 news sources, 60 news sources that are more than happy to tell you about Alec Baldwin and how innocent that we have to look at him as. He has to be considered innocent. And they won't talk to you about protecting women. 15 members of our government, state and local, won't tell you about women to protect themselves and to be aware that there are sexual predators that may be coming into their community over the next couple of days. And they absolutely don't want to tell you that Dr. Fauci is more than happy to allow experiments on puppies. This is the Biden-Harris administration. Oh, and there's 3,000 migrants that are coming, and we have to go overseas. We have to go overseas to find out that there's 3,000 illegal aliens that are coming to America, regardless of what the law says, and they're coming right for our border. because they know Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to let them walk right into our country. This is the Biden-Harris administration. Wow. But Orange Man Bad isn't tweeting anymore, but he will create his own social media network. It'll be the Orange Man Bad Network. And if you go on it, they're going to tell you that you are a racist and that you're evil, you're a transphobe, a ist and a phobe, and that you're the worst thing that's ever happened in America, even as their hero, Dr. Fauci, is funding experiments on puppies. But I am an evil, you are an evil, transphobe, racist, neo-Nazi, because you tweet and say that you don't think whatever that is that they want you to think. Let that sink in for a second, folks. They're going to tell you that if you don't agree with what they are saying in the news media, if you don't agree with Don Lemon, if you don't agree with Dr. Gupta, if you agree with Russell Brand or Joe Rogan or Tim Pool, or God forbid you agree with me, well, then you must be a racist, because their heroes, like Dr. Fauci, want to kill puppies through vile experiments that they couldn't do on American soil, but they're using your tax dollars to do. That's what makes you evil and them good. That's the difference between a hero in the Biden-Harris administration, a hero and evil people. And guess where they want to place you? And if the fact checkers on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter are upset about what I'm saying, I have shown you the evidence from the mainstream media, almost all of them from the left-leaning sources. If they want to tell you, if they want to question this, there's my sources right there. I've done the fact check for them. I've shown it to you. The links will be in the description. I don't have words for this, folks. I really don't have words for this. And by the way, I first heard about this from Joe Rogan. It was on Twitter. As I was getting ready for the show today, I saw this and I was like, you got to be kidding me. And by the way, this story came out yesterday. This came out on October 23rd. The news media has had over 24 hours to take the opportunity to make you aware of what's going on. And they won't do it. At least the left-leaning news media, they don't think this is an important story. They don't want to cover this. They don't want to tell you about this. They're avoiding this. Because they got to protect their hero. They got to protect Dr. Fauci. They have to protect the NIH. Because if you suddenly realize that Dr. Fauci isn't this wonderful angelic hero that he has been made out to be, if he is not this infallible figure that has been proven, he isn't. He is fallible. He is completely flawed, and he is not often correct, as proven by Dr. Rand Paul, as proven by many documents and video of himself in a space of a week. Then you might doubt everything else that they're saying. You might actually say, maybe I should ask a question. Not that you're going to get an answer. God knows they won't give me an answer. And by the way, if you do want answers about what's happening with the Afghan refugees, if you do want answers about whether or not they are being vetted, will your community be safe, then do me a favor. Send this video to every one of the elected officials I've mentioned before. That would be Governor Kathy Hochul. That would be Congressman Antonio Delgado. That would be County Executive Mark Molinaro, County Executive Jason Garnar. I sent it out to Andrea Cousins of the New York State Senate. I sent it out to Carl Hastie, the Speaker of the New York State Assembly. I sent it out to Joe Angelino in the New York State Assembly, Joe Griffo, I sent, who's a state senator. I sent it out to Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and, of course, appointed Governor Kathy Hochul. Maybe if they get enough of these, they'll respond. Maybe the major news media will see this enough times that they will respond. We're in a troubling place, folks. We are in a troubling place in America when we see these kind of acts of evil, the way they're turning their eyes, they're just closing their eyes to these horrible, insane things. The vaccine mandates, forgetting Americans in Afghanistan, experiments on puppies with your tax dollars. And the answer? Oh, by the way, Alec Baldwin is a good guy. He's completely innocent. Killed somebody, but he's innocent. What's going on? And again, if you think I am wrong, every week, the phone line is available. You heard Jason call in. You can call in too. You see the comments from Hot Chicks and Michael Bowie and Anne and Tina and so many others. I'm always happy to hear your comments. I'm sorry I had to end this on the troubling news coming from Joe Rogan from the news media talking about what's happening in Tunisia. I really am. I didn't want to end it on that note. So let me say instead, if you found this to be informative, interesting, useful, please do us a favor. Like this, share this, subscribe. Especially subscribe. It allows us to be able to reach more people. We're almost at 1,000. And that's one of my main goals on this channel is to get to 1,000 people. To be able to reach around the world and to hear voices from around the world. Whether you agree or disagree. We're not progressives here. You don't have to agree with us. We don't obligate that. It's not a requirement. We want to hear what you think. We want to hear what you have to say. And we want to talk about these serious issues. And maybe even get some answers occasionally. Maybe even get a fix to the problems. That's what we try to do. And that's what we're always going to continue to try and do. And some days, those are difficult discussions on tough issues. But I'd rather talk with you about a tough issue than leave you in the dark and have to leave you with tough consequences. I'd rather take the slings and arrows and have all of the left, the progressives, come out and say, oh, you're an ist and a phobe, and actually provide a solution than be silent and let beagle little puppies get experimented on, let sexual predators attack women, and not tell the public to be able to have proper discipline when using a firearm. Oh, hey, the Giants won. There's good news. Giants are my team. And instead of watching football, I'm here with you because you are more important. These stories are more important. And I'm more involved with you and in what's going on in our government than the entertainment that I'll see later. I hope more people get to see this. I hope people pay attention. I truly, truly hope that this story goes around, and I'm not asking for credit. And for every member of the news, every member of the press that I know, that I have sent this to, that I am talking to, that get to see this, I don't ask for credit. I'm not asking you to mention my name or that I've been working on this since September. I'm not asking you to mention the letters I have put out. I'm asking you to cover this and get answers for the public. At the same time, I would ask you to go out and focus on the fact that we need to talk about gun safety, not Alec Baldwin getting off of a actual crime. He needs to be convicted. He needs to get arrested. He needs to get tried. He committed a crime. Let's talk about gun safety. Stop trying to save Alec Baldwin. And let's also call out the fact that this is despicable to use puppies in this kind of experiment. So cruel, so inhuman. And I mean, it is inhuman. It is inhumane that you couldn't do this in America. Guess what? It shouldn't be done in Tunisia either, especially not with American dollars, American tax dollars. But I want to be happy. Oops. Went on again. I want you to be happy. I want this to, folks, I appreciate every single one of you who have been here with me. We've been on for 2 hours and 50 minutes. I'm going to let this go. I want to spend 10 minutes with you guys, just with you, just talking to you. Round it up for a full 3 hours. And by the way, if you've been here for 3 hours, definitely subscribe. Definitely like and share this. If you've been with me that long, if you've been able to come in and out of the story and follow this, like and share. Subscribe, please. We don't make any money on this. Just do that for us. You know, I'm 53 years old. Half a century that I've seen in this nation. And I will tell you, for everything that I've just mentioned today, all the problems that we're talking about, all the issues that are affecting us, the absolute abysmal nature of the Biden-Harris administration, I got to tell you, America is a great country. This is a great country. Even with every single problem we've talked about, even with a government that is failing, even with politicians that aren't listening to the public, that are avoiding the news media that's manipulating the information that you're seeing, and America's still the greatest country in the world. Not perfect. God help us, far from perfect. But America is the greatest country in the world. Because that's why we have 3,000 people right now who are walking on foot to come to the United States, and they know that the Biden-Harris administration is going to let them come in. And they are going to be happy to be second-class, hidden citizens, illegal aliens, criminals in America, because to do that and to be in the sidelines, in the shadows of America, is better than to be anywhere else in the world. If there was a better place to be, they'd be making lines there. They'd be marching to that country. There isn't anywhere better. They're coming here. They're not going to China. They're not going to Russia, North Korea. They're not going to Venezuela. They're coming to America because we're that good. Even though we are screwed up at this moment, even though our country is being run by someone who does not have all of their mental faculties, even though we have an administration that is completely inept, and we have politicians who are absolutely running away from the people. We are the greatest country in the world. Kind of sad for the rest of the world. Kind of sad for us because we've been better. We have been so much better. In fact, we don't have to go back that far in time. We don't have to go back far in time at all. You know, I can go back just a few months. A year ago, we were in better shape and a better nation than we are today. Which means that we can be better tomorrow. We just need politicians that care. We need a public that's aware. And we need a news media that actually tells us the truth. Not making up stories, not painting stories, not like the Joe Rogan, it's horse dewormer. No, it's not. It's a human drug given by a doctor. You know, the very same doctors that we're firing right now for not obeying. See, that's the problem. America has gone from free will to obey. We're still the greatest nation in the world, but it's slipping. because we're forgetting that we're free and we make choices, and instead we're going to obey. You don't have, what did Joe Biden say? You don't have that freedom anymore. What did Arnold Schwarzenegger say? You screw your freedom. What did George Takei say? Oh, you should be punished for not obeying. See, that's the problem. And it's not a problem for you and me. I'm 53 years old. I'm not going to make it much longer. Not to say that I'm not in good health, and it's not because I'm afraid of the pandemic, not at all. But I'm closer to the end of my years than I am at the beginning of my years. And I have to tell you, they're not doing all this stuff because they're trying to change my mind. They're not changing my life experiences. They're not suddenly telling me, Mike, you just didn't realize that, America's so terrible. Well, I've been here for 53 years. I've lived overseas. I've lived across the country. Yeah, America is that great. I'm seeing that in all the people who are trying to get into this nation, legally and illegally. This is a wonderful, beautiful nation. I've seen that for half a century. They're not trying to convince me. They're trying to convince your kids. They're trying to convince 20-year-olds, and they're trying to convince kids in your high schools and in elementary schools. They're trying to train them to obey. I want you to remember that, because every time you see these stories come out, every time you hear people say, oh, the mask mandate, you have to do that. The pandemic mandate, you have to do that. They're not talking to you. They're talking to your kids. They're talking to your kids. They're teaching your kids, obey. When they tell your kids, there's only two choices in life. You're a racist or you're a victim. And by the way, if you happen to be white, you're the racist. If you happen to not be white, then you're the victim. Unless you disagree, then you're also a racist. When they're telling your kids that, critical race theory, intersectionality, gender identity politics, that's not about 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds. They're not talking to us. They're talking to the 8 to 15-year-olds. Because when those kids in 5 to 10 years, when they grow up, when they vote, the only thing they're going to know is, well, we obey. That's what they want. And that's what this program fights against. And by the way, that's on the left, on the right, in the center. I don't care whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, a progressive, a libertarian. We fight that anywhere it's happening. I don't care what organization it is. We have taken on the right just as much as the left on some of these issues. And we will again in the future. The fact that I'm a Republican has nothing to do with the fact that these are the issues facing America. And that we have to be aware, this isn't about me. It's not about you, per se. It's definitely about our kids. It's definitely about the future. And in 5 to 10 years, if you think things are bad now, if you think it's bad that they're experimenting on puppies today, if you think it's bad, excuse me, if you think it's bad that the heroes they are trying to promote in our faces, doing Netflix stories about Fauci, the great man Fauci, they've done a documentary on him. He's such a great man that he allows and uses your tax money to experiment on puppies while they're alive, disabling their vocal cords so that no one can hear them beg for their lives. If you think that Alec Baldwin is the biggest news in America, if you think that they're trying to tell you, if we're seeing that they forgot that hundreds of Americans are in Afghanistan right now and they're doing nothing about them and they've forgotten them and they will not even mention their names or existence, if you think it's bad that politicians are willing to just turn a blind eye and turn their backs on the fact that women are being assaulted, if you think that's bad, imagine what happens in 10 to 15 years Imagine what happens in 10 to 15 years to your kids who don't know any different. They have never known difference. They have always known obey. That's all they know. That's all they were ever taught. Obey. Because that's who they're teaching. That's who this is all about. You know what, folks? I love you all. I really do. And I appreciate that you spend time with me every week and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from anywhere in the world. We go out on all social media that the internet overlords will allow to reach out to you, to hear your voices, because it's important. To talk about everything that's going on and everything that's on your mind, because it's important. Because that's how we keep freedom. That's how we improve our nation. That's how we make things better. Not always because we agree, but because we need to talk about these things and we need to work on the solutions together. And that's what this program's about, and that's what we're going to keep doing. And during the week, you'll see some more of our videos. We do at least 3 a week, and then we'll be back every Sunday. Folks, I want to thank you. Now I'm going to go off and I'm going to try and have some fun. I'm going to visit my friends over at the Belmar. Check out that score with the Giants. Thank you, Michael, for updating me on that. And most of all, folks, I want you to be well. The world's screwed up enough as it is. Take care of each other. Be kind to each other. And I'll talk to you again soon.